it's 1:30. Let's get this meeting rolling.
Recording in progress.
This is Christina Hill, Chairman of the Board of Adjustments, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum?
I will do roll call. Christina Hill,
Here?
Clay Thomas,
Here.
Don Christensen, here. Rob Pierce,
Here.
Brad Stanley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I've got the flag right here. Stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Large, can you read the ethics law announcement?
Board members are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the board today, you've received a gift or loan, you have a pecuniary interest, you have a commitment in a private capacity such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, or you provide a representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered, you must disclose that loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Board members are also reminded that under the Board of Adjustment rules, if you had any contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the board today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you. And Mr. Lloyd, can you read the appeal procedure?
Yes, ma'am. Most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you are aggrieved and disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and you want to appeal its actions, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee.
Great, thank you. Now, is there any public comment at this time, Madam Secretary?
I have no public comment in chambers.
And there are no hands
Okay.
raised via Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Can we approve the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair, I so move.
Second? All in favor?
This is Rob for the record. I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion carries. Approval of the minutes for the February meeting. Is there any change to the minutes? There was a change, I know, that Adriana pointed out.
Was that on the March or the February meeting? I believe the next item on the agenda is the approval of the March 3rd, 2022 agenda.
We just did that.
Did we do that? I thought we did.
We approved the agenda
Oh,
already.
okay, I'm sorry.
Now we're approving the minutes from the February meeting, February 3rd.
My mistake. I apologize.
That's okay. So,
Madam Chair,
yes,
this is Clay Thomas. Yes, we did receive some documentation that clarified that you were not present during the first SUP that we heard. I don't know.
it
if
was
that-
8A,
Yes.
right?
I don't know if we need to state that or so state that within the, at this point in time also, because it came from staff.
We can do it as make a motion in regard to the draft minutes as amended.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Well, and it does say in the draft minutes that I have, Chairwoman Hill recused herself from item 8A, so. Yeah. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment if it is not so noted.
Okay. Second?
This is Rob Pierce for the record. I'll second it.
Okay, thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay, I did not receive a hard copy of the packet, so I am having to do this all on my computer while I'm looking at this computer, looking at this computer. So, pardon me in advance if there's anything that isn't right. Okay, so let me go. We're done with the minutes. Now we're on variance case number WPVAR 220001, PERS Callahan side yard setback reduction. And the staff is Katie Stark.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, I am not Katie Stark. I'm Roger Pelham, and I am standing in for Katie this afternoon. Variance case number WPVAR 22-0001 is a request to reduce a side yard setback.
Sorry, Roger, try
The-
again.
The remote,
There you go.
there we go. This is located in the Tahoe area plan on the east side of Lake Tahoe, as shown here on the overhead photograph. There is an existing dwelling, as you can see. The request is to reduce the required side yard setback from 5 feet to 1 foot, with the intent to enlarge an existing bedroom and then to add another bedroom on the second level above it, on a new second level above it. Reductions in setbacks, of course, are permissible in accordance with Article 804. This is a .192 acre parcel. It's at 1710 Lakeshore. And again, here you have a vicinity map just adjacent to State Route 28 there. What you see on the left side of the screen here is the existing portion of the structure, of the dwelling, that currently does in fact protrude into the side yard setback. So this is an existing non-conforming use. And you can see sort of two triangles there. One has some green stripes, and then you have sort of an extension of that triangle down further. That is the area that the applicant is proposing to expand an additional area into that side yard setback. Right now, it's still about 4 feet. It would be going all the way to 1 foot from the property line. And again, you can see that a little bit better on, or a little further out on the right-hand side there. This is the existing north elevation on the left side of the screen, and the proposed there on the right. As you can see, they're proposing to go straight up over the top. And again, here we are looking, we would be looking east at this elevation here from the existing and then proposed. Here we have the floor plan. Again, you can see on the left-hand side, you have the small bedroom there with the bathroom, and then on the right, the enlarged bedroom with the stairs there going up to the newly proposed one. And here we have the upper level plan with the bedroom and bathroom. So, characteristics of this site. It has a regulatory zone or a zoning of East Shore. In the Tahoe area, setbacks are determined by the lot size. And for lots between 5,000 and 12,000 square feet, the setbacks are 5 feet on the side, 20 feet front and rear. This one's approximately 8,400 square feet, so that falls squarely in the middle of that 5 to 12,000. Variances are limited to being granted only when there are special circumstances that result in a hardship. These special circumstances are laid out in state law, in NRS, and then they come into our code essentially verbatim. And those are exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of the specific piece of property by reason of exceptional topographic conditions or other extraordinary and exceptional situation or condition of the piece of the property. What I would like to point out here is that the hardship is based upon the property, not necessarily the improvements or the convenience of the applicant, but the physical characteristics of the landform itself. So let's look at each of those criteria. Exceptional narrowness. Within that zone, the minimum lot width is 60 feet. The minimum lot width on this parcel is 75 feet. This parcel is not exceptionally narrow. Likewise, shallowness. Our minimum lot dimension again is 60 feet. This is approximately 110 foot in depth. It is not exceptionally shallow. Exceptional shape. This is roughly rectangular. Now, topography. This is a steeply sloped parcel. It has a slope of approximately 36%, and it is, of course, more steeply sloped, as you can see where those contour lines are closer together on the right-hand side, that is to say the uphill side, than they are on the left-hand side, that is to say the downhill side, where it is a little bit flatter. And it is, of course, flatter down where the dwelling is located. One of the characteristics of finding a hardship is that hardship is unique to this parcel of land. All of the parcels of land in this subdivision, in this area, have similar slope characteristics that is not out of the ordinary. The request, of course, is to increase the number of bedrooms. This house is already non-conforming in that it already protrudes into the setback, and theoretically, they could expand within the buildable area by 10%. Again, because it is already non-conforming, this is an expansion substantially more than that 10%. It may be that there would be some special circumstance if we were looking at sort of going backwards into that very steep slope, but it's a little difficult to see where the exceptional condition is to go further to the side, further into rather the flatter area. For that reason, staff has come to the recommendation that no, that there are not special circumstances. One of the things cited by the applicant is that we have TRPA regulations that must be complied with in addition to Washoe County Code. TRPA regulations do not create an exceptional or extraordinary condition because those are standard requirements that are applied to all of the parcels of land within the Tahoe Basin in Nevada and in California as well. And those are applied equally to all parcels of land. So those are neither extraordinary nor exceptional. After the evaluation of hardship, we need to look at the remainder of the findings of fact. Will it create a substantial detriment to public good? Because we can't make a finding of hardship, yes, theoretically, it is then impairing the intent of the development code. So no, we don't believe that that finding can be made. Likewise, special privileges, again, because we don't have a special circumstance, that is to say something unique or extraordinary about this parcel of land versus others in the identical regulatory zone. Yes, granting a variance to this person to increase the amount of protrusion into the side yard setback would be a special privilege. So the no special privilege finding is also very difficult. Use authorized, certainly. They can certainly build onto the house, they can certainly go up, and if they were to propose to do this within, over the top of the existing footprint or within the setback area, that is perfectly permissible. And effect on the military installation, there is no military installation within the area required to be noticed for this, so there can be no negative impact. This was sent out for review by all of the relevant agencies, and we have no conditions of approval, of course, because staff has come to the determination there's no special circumstances. Notice, this was sent to 68 parcels at 2,000 feet, which results in at least 30 individual property owners having received notice. I think we've gone over these variance findings. Because we can't identify a special circumstance, denial of the variance request is recommended. We have a possible motion, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Roger. Is there a applicant available for presentation?
Yes, I have Philip Gillenfar.
On Zoom.
Yes, on Zoom. I apologize. Philip, if you could please unmute yourself.
Yep, unmute, unzoomed. Chairman Hill, board members, thanks for taking the opportunity to review this. Zoom is such an interesting thing. This is the third or fourth time I think we've done a Zoom call through either the Planning Commission or Board of Adjustment. It's always an interesting way to present. I'm representing the clients, Hers Callahan. It's a family. They originally owned 2 parcels there in Rocky Point. Rocky Point is an old, very old pre-TRPA or pre-Washoe County, not Washoe County, but pre-Incline Village subdivision. I think somebody drew it in a map in San Francisco because it's basically a straight up from the lake. Most of the parcels could not be built on. It's a very challenging little area there just on the outside edge of Incline Village. We're requesting the north side setback reduction as Roger showed on the map to facilitate the expansion of the existing bedroom wing. Early in the process, we reached out because this particular property incorporated a portion of Romance Avenue. And early in the process, we reached out to staff, sent an email to Trevor Lloyd asking specifically with a drawing that we were proposing to remove an old bedroom wing and reconstruct a bedroom wing as a 2-story improvement, and that new improvement would be in the setback. And given that this was in this Romance Avenue portion, was there an issue with that setback encroachment? And the response back was there was, in the email response back was that there was not. And at that point, we moved forward with the plans and moved forward with the engineering. We were then surprised, obviously, that later on, when we submitted this to the county, they came back and told us we needed to have a variance for this. We went ahead and processed the variance. And then, of course, we're surprised by staff's denial of that because we do believe we meet the findings. We can start with special circumstances. You know, in the past, and you know, we've been doing this for a lot of years, all the way up until, I'd say, recent years, the county and the Board of Adjustment, along with the Board of County Commissioners, has recognized TRPA as a hardship in certain cases. Not all properties in the Tahoe Basin meet the conditions of a TRPA ruling. And in some cases, you have properties like this, which are class 1A, which means you can't build on them at all. You can't relocate your coverage. You have to build on the coverage you currently have. And you can't relocate findings unbuildable on the site. So we still believe that based on the fact that this property is a 36% upslope, that is extremely the site constraints are very difficult, extraordinary, and exceptional because of the situation of the slope and the TRPA regulation not allowing us to build above the site or below the site, and there's really no place to have an addition that would occur on the site, with the exception of where we are currently disturbed on the site itself. So we feel like this is the exceptional topographical, extraordinary, exceptional situation that's the condition of the property that doesn't allow us to have the same privileges as the neighbors having more bedrooms, et cetera. Most of the homes in this little neighborhood are substantially 2 and 3 times larger than this particular home. And obviously the homes in this neighborhood are half the size of the houses in Incline Village proper because of the size of these parcels. So we feel that there's a real clear definition that we fall into extraordinary and exceptional circumstances based on the TRPA classification of the land there, and the fact that we're 36% upslope directly from the street. We don't really even have the capacity to incorporate a garage on this property because of the steepness and the restriction of coverage. If you looked at page 36, which is your C1 sheet, which is 36, and which is the next sheet down from here, or 2 sheets down. What next sheet? Yeah. So you can see here this little exhibit I wrote. The red lines there represent where the existing structure was, and then the proposed structure being 12 inches. You can see that we're 30 feet from, well, over 35 feet from the neighboring property, because there is the easement of the other half of the easement of Romance Avenue going toward the property to the north. So I don't believe that I believe there's a special circumstance here that really limits us to build anywhere else on the site to be able to accommodate bedroom wing. This is an old historic kind of family structure that's been there since, well, I think the 30s or 40s, but it's been there many, many years. I just don't believe that we can't, I believe that we need to consider the TRPA constraints as part of the hardship situation. And I'm not sure why staff over the last couple of years has not allowed us to utilize TRPA as a hardship, because it is specifically restricting these parcels from being able to build similar. And every single parcel is calculated differently, whether you're a class A1A or a class 4, they're all calculated different in the way TRPA recognizes them. So I don't believe that the setback request is a detriment to the neighboring sites. We are not changing the drainage or creating any detriment to the neighboring property. You can see that there's already improvements on Romance Avenue that connect these two homes, this home and the home to the north, that were built there many years ago, which are still there, that basically create kind of accessibility, because it's too difficult to go down to the highway and then climb back up from the highway back up to the house neighboring site. So the drainage facilities we have will be completely within the site, and that is, of course, according to CRPA's requirements. So we also reached out to all the neighbors, and I know that there was a comment that there were 60 neighbors, but when I look at the aerial map, the majority of them are Nevada state land and U.S. Forest Service lands because of the topographical situation of the properties. And that we received back letters from Steinheimer Postal, which is across the street, the Finneys, which are directly across the street, and the Dixons, which are directly across the street, and the neighbor on each side, Mr. Pryor on the south, who's immediately to the south, and the Dunlaps, who are the parcel that you see on the site plan to the north. We've been involved in a couple other variances in that neighborhood where the front setbacks for the Finneys, the Dixons, the Bistols, and the Millers all were approved with, in some cases, 0 front setback reductions. And the Pryor property, which is the property to the south, just past the Nevada State Lands parcel, their structure actually sits in the highway right away and had to have a boundary line adjustment dealt with the county and the Nevada State Lands in order to accommodate that. The Dunlaps to the north are potentially in the process of moving forward with a request for a garage and incorporation of additional living space, which would also require them to come in and ask for a variance. So we received support letters from all of them, including the one that we feel is probably the neighbor who would potentially have the most impact, which would be the Dunlaps to the north, and they've all supported this variance. I would hope that you recognize the concern that we have with TRPA and the issues we have with trying to fit within that. I appreciate that Madam Chair understands the TRPA and may be able to kind of expand a little bit on kind of the challenge that we have in the Incline Village, Crystal Bay area, because I believe that we should recognize that as an additional hardship that comes into play when positioned way if we go about going through design, because we don't have the same privileges we do in the rest of Washoe County because of TRPA's additional requirements that force us to build in certain capacities within the site, and that makes it a pretty substantial hardship. So with that, I would hope that you would reconsider the staff's recommendation and in fact review this and provide an approval for the variance. We believe we definitely meet the special circumstances, that we are not a detriment, and that there is no special privilege in our request. So I appreciate that, and I'm available for any questions.
Christina, if you
You're
could
on
please unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. Unmute. Okay, so I don't know why there aren't alternatives to move that addition to the south side of the property. And the land coverage is the TRPA hardship, but it's all 1A, so you can relocate coverage from one 1A area to another 1A area, can't you?
In that particular case, we can't, because we can't make the relocation findings work according to the TRPA staff. We did look at the option of moving of positioning this to the south side of the house, but there is no capacity for coming in with your driveway and the parking areas and things on that side of the building, because right now you have this very steep driveway coming up to kind of a little parking space, and then that little area there is much smaller than the area on the opposite side of the house. It also would completely change the positioning of how you enter and exit the house, which would require a major change to the existing historic structure, because the bedroom wing is currently on that north side of the house. The TRPA would not let us, would not recognize relocation findings on that site, or except for the areas that are disturbed currently.
And what about, it looks like the most of the encroachment is taken up by a staircase. Is that true?
Well, yeah, because there's not
The
another way to
staircase
get the
going up
stair
and
in
up?
there. We don't have that drawing in front of you, so I'm gonna do what you're doing, zip to another drawing here, which I think is, I don't have the page number in your document. But yes, we have the small bedroom and bathroom on each floor with a staircase that we've set in there in order to get to that access to that second floor, because we can't accommodate a staircase in the existing structure.
But could you do like a spiral staircase that wouldn't take up all that coverage?
Well, it's really not, it would take, the spiral would actually take up more space on the side setback because there's no other place to install that. And then you technically aren't supposed to use a spiral for sleeping space exiting from the second level. We tried to minimize this footprint down to basically the minimum amount needed for, you can see the bathrooms we've installed are extremely small, and then the bedroom space is just big enough for a double bed. And there's not a whole lot of walking space or extra space in that area at all. So we tried to minimize that impact in that layout, including down to the stairs just being 3 feet wide.
Okay. Okay, well, those are my questions. Does anybody else have questions for Phil or staff?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Brad Stanley.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't hardly see you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I had a question, it's pretty basic. What is the distance, did you say, from, let's say, the proposed roof overhang to the adjoining property line?
So we have basically just a 6-inch overhang there. So the property line, so that it would end prior to the property line. So there'd be 6 inches there. In order to control the drainage on that side of the house, we would run a gutter line on that side of the house so that we can contain the drainage on that portion of the roof within the property line.
I'm sorry, did you say maybe you broke up a little bit. Did you say 6 inches?
Yeah, so the roof, the building, that, just in that one corner, because the building, if we went back to, I don't know if staff can put that drawing back up, that site plan that we had, the overhang extends past the corner of the house 6 inches. So it's within the property line. However, the building also steps at an angle from the property line on 2 sheets back, I think.
Okay.
The site plan is what I was looking at, because it shows the angle that the
Yours?
building sits at an angle to the property line. So as you go back, I don't know, you can't see my cursor, but yeah, so you can see that only at this really front corner is where the roof would come within 6 inches of the property line. And as you go back, you actually are within the setback at the back corner of the garage, of the bedroom space.
All right, thank you. And one more, I have another question, please. And it is this: to save me having to do the math, what is the percentage of the total that the proposed addition is? And let's see if I can say that in English. Is it less or greater than 10%? And if so, by how much, please?
I didn't do a calculation, but you know, we have an existing bedroom wing there now, and we're adding an additional bedroom. I would say that the additional space that we're adding probably adds about 10 or 15%. So it's probably greater than 10%, but probably less than 15% of an add to the existing house.
All right, thank you very much.
Are there any more questions?
Madam Chair, this is Clay Thomas. I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I believe that at one time there was already a variance granted for this existing house. Is that correct? For the original house?
I'm not sure of that, but I was not part of the abandonment of Romance Avenue, and potentially during the abandonment of Romance Avenue, part of that Romance Avenue abandonment included the variance in order to bring the existing structure into compliance via a variance as part of the Romance Avenue abandonment. But I don't know that answer, because I did look up and I couldn't find anything that showed that with the county.
Okay, maybe.
But the staff may know that answer, I don't know.
Maybe I'll ask Mr. Pelham if he can recall that.
Good afternoon. For the record, Roger Pelham with Washington County Planning. No, there was no variance granted to the best of my knowledge. What we actually had was a situation where this dwelling was constructed over the property line. We then took away that property line. That chunk of what used to be Romance Avenue has been added to this parcel, making it larger. But the dwelling itself is existing non-conforming. It was built prior to current code, prior to probably 2 or 3 codes ago. And I would come back and I would also address the degree of expansion. Essentially, you're expanding by 100% because you have one bedroom here, it's getting a little bigger, and there's another bedroom going in on top of it. So the area within that setback is probably doubling or tripling. So that is to say, the exacerbation of the degree of nonconformance is probably a couple of 3 times more. However, if a variance is granted, it's not nonconforming. It's conforming at that point because they have the special exception. Okay? And that, of course, is the question for your consideration today.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
as long as Mr. Pelham is there, may I ask you a question? Could you go over again for us, please, why in this particular case, slope is not a hardship?
Absolutely. Can I ask admin to go ahead and put my presentation back up there?
Do you
I'd
want
like to
the
look at the site
topography?
plan
The site plan?
that shows the topography. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Oops. Sorry, just a second. Current slide. Was it this one? Or do you want the one that specifically calls out topography?
The one that's called out topography,
Okay.
please.
Shown as shape. Okay,
There we go.
there you go.
Okay, so if we look to the north and south, that is to say up and down, on this overhead photograph, what you can see is the contour lines are relatively widely spaced. That is to say it is relatively flat. So pushing north or pushing south is not forced by the topography. The extraordinary topography, in a nutshell, really is located to the right side of this photo, that is to say uphill or east in our particular case. So that's why that topography isn't forcing the need for the further, to push further into the setback area.
All right, thank you.
Certainly.
Any more questions for staff, or can we ask Phil a question, or?
Madam Chair, I have one more question for staff.
Okay,
The applicant or the representative for the applicant, getting in your steps, mentioned a letter or some kind of correspondence early on with an email that seems to be not consistent with the recommendation here. Can you shed any light on that, or does that have to be?
I believe that we have planning manager Trevor Lloyd available to address that, since it was his correspondence.
All right, thank you.
It was, and I was looking for that correspondence, could not find it. I do remember it quite clearly. The question centered around the ability to build within the area that was known as Romance Avenue. That was my understanding, and my response was, it certainly appears that Romance has been abandoned, and you can certainly build in that area. And I think Mr. Gillenfarb took that to mean he could build within the setback area, although I question, I know Phil has been doing this for now 25-some years, as long as I've been here. So I don't know that he didn't understand that the abandonment would not remove an area of a setback. And so I'm confused by that. But my understanding was the question was that whether or not the applicant could build within the area that was previously abandoned, and he can certainly do that.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd.
Madam Chair, for the record, Don Christensen,
Yeah.
I have a question for the applicant.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, in the site plan, there is an indication right next to the existing non-compliant area.
Right,
It says block wall. And what does that refer to, that block wall?
Phil?
Yes, is there a chance that page 36, is that what page it is? Page 36 of the,
This is Lacey Kerfoot, Recording Secretary. Are you referring to the staff report? Page
yeah, the staff
36?
report, page 36, yes.
Okay,
I find it that with Zoom, it's a lot easier to keep the staff on the staff report or keep the board members on the staff report instead of presenting something new. So it's because they have that staff report in front of them. That's why
Okay, this would be
found it
page,
easier to-
excuse me. This will be page 4 of the staff report.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Site plan.
one moment.
You have, yeah, there it is. Okay. So there is a wood retaining wall it says block wall, but it's a wood retaining wall that runs around the back of the house. You can see here it says wood retaining wall. I don't know if you can see my cursor yet there. It runs around the back of the house, and as it comes around, it then becomes a block wall out to this front corner where it's green. And then actually that block wall continues there. That's the existing edge of the structure and of the existing addition, existing bedroom wing. That answers your question.
Well, partially. Is it your intent to extend that block wall?
No, we actually would remove that block wall, and that entire wall line that you see that's on that north side of the house that runs front to back there, that would then become part of the structure, and it would be, some of that would be retaining dirt, but we would have the contour there on the side of the building, which is right in this area. If you can see my cursor. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor.
No, we can't see your cursor because you're not sharing the screen, but if you can verbalize it to me, I'll do my best to follow along.
So the area to the north, you can see along that area, that's the east side of the house, but the north, just this, from there to the red line, that area alongside of the house would have the natural contour back into the side of the building, so that you would just see the side of the building, and there wouldn't be, let's say, this additional block wall, because that would be part of the retaining wall within the foundation of the house.
That answers my question. Thank you.
And are those BMPs next to for the drip line?
Yeah. Madam Hill, can I answer those other three questions? I can answer that question and then the other two. The first one, of course, is your question regarding the BMPs. The BMPs were drawn by staff, and they just showed the BMPs, and the BMPs actually go over the property line, which is not the intent. So that the final drawings that we have, which have a gutter system that runs back along the house to a downspout that puts you into a dry well. It's within the property. So no encroachment would go beyond the property line. So that's how we would resolve that particular item. The other item was, I don't have my notes. The other item was the email specifically stated, we are proposing to remove an old bedroom wing and reconstruct. The current bedroom building portion and improvements are in the new setback created by the abandonment of Romance Avenue. The current building and improvements are in the new setback created by the abandonment of Romance Avenue. Will this proposal be acceptable? We were asked to provide the easement document, and then we received an email saying, yes, this proposal appears to be acceptable. So that's the email we received. And part of the confusion on our part, even though we've got 32 years of working within Incline Village, Crystal Bay, and Washoe County, is that we have not dealt with an easement, an abandonment portion of a previous road. And so we were trying to find out if the setback actually still stood the same way. So there was a little confusion on our part because of the abandonment of Romance. I think that was the only other question that came up. I know Roger had indicated 100% increase, but I'm not sure if we've got a 1,100 square foot facility now and we're adding 100 square feet, if that's 100% increase. So that's why I was concerned. The last item that he discussed was the slope. So the slope of this property starts at the highway and goes basically an average of greater than 30% straight up all the way. The home was built, which created a ledge where the house is, and that's the flat spot that's currently there today. But historically, this property went straight up from the street and continued all the way to the mountain peak. So there is the next ledge up is the road built, thankfully, by Washoe County with water quality mitigation funds, and that's the East Shore Trail that is enjoyed by everyone, and that's substantially higher up on the hill above us. But this particular property goes straight from the street. We had to create a driveway situation, which is extremely dangerous, that basically V's into the two properties on the north and the south, and it comes up at a steep angle. The driveways are probably 25% slope up. And so really this entire property is an extremely steep parcel starting from the highway. Just because the house has a ledge in there, it's now got a man-made ledge that appears to be less steep than the rest of the entire property. So I hope that clarifies those couple of questions. I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Hill.
Does the board have any other questions for staff or the applicant? Seeing none. Is there any public comment, Madam Secretary?
I do have someone here in chambers.
Okay.
You're welcome. Just state your first and last name, and when you're finished, please come see me.
Hi, my name is Matt Callahan. I'm part owner of the house in question. My grandfather built this home back in the 50s. At the time, there was only 4 of them. It's a very small house. And through a couple generations, we do have increased need for sleeping area. And so we're just asking that we have a small extension of our home to make sure everyone has a roof over their heads to enjoy that beautiful area. We're not asking for some of the other crazy buildings and extensions and things that are going on in Incline Village. We're just asking for 4 feet to get this done because it is a very steep, unique area, and there's only a certain place to do it, and when we feel that this is it. So appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further comments in chambers.
Thank you, Matt. And I have no hands raised via Zoom. And for the record, we did receive 2 letters of public comment for this item. One was from Matt and Trang Dunlap, and the other from Richard and Lillian Dixon. They were both provided to the board and posted online.
Thank you. And they were both in support of the project, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's bring it back to the board for discussion. I know this area is very steep and very old and it's unbelievable to me that anybody can live there. You have to go off the highway and take a left and go up this road, and it's a pretty challenging site to have, more than 1 or 2 cars, I'm sure, could fit there. I don't know how they do it, but I was hoping they could expand somewhere else that wouldn't require encroachment into the setback, so it wouldn't be a variance thing. But I guess they're so limited in their parking and their access that can't be done. Or they could expand just straight up and not in the side yard setback, but for some reason that wasn't considered. Does anybody else have any comments or concerns about this project?
Yeah, this is Rob Pierce, the record. I'm looking at the property on Google Maps right now, and it appears that there may not be any issues if they go up. Just from looking at it here, I do see what you're talking about on the steepness and all that, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Mr. Stanley, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The question I asked about how close it was to the adjoining property line, it was 6 inches. And the water and all the runoff would be taken care of. That seemed optimistic to me. And I was concerned about interfering with the neighboring property.
Yeah. Mr. Thomas, do you have any questions or?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a quick question, I guess, for Mr. Lloyd. It was brought up about TRPA, and that TRPA should be taken into account as we decide this matter. And I guess I'm asking for a little bit of guidance. It would appear to me that TRPA is a standalone agency with no oversight to this board, in addition to the current regulations and codes of Washoe County. Is that correct, or is there leeway there, or can you help me out there?
Yeah. TRPA has oversight and jurisdiction over all properties in the Tahoe Basin. I think the question is whether or not the need for, or the lack of available coverage on this property justifies provides for a justification that it meets, in fact, the first finding, which is that of a hardship because of the lack of coverage. It's been determined that, as Mr. Pelham indicated, that all properties are faced with the same constraint, and so based on that, it's not a special privilege or a unique hardship specific to this property, unlike any other property would have. So. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. Thank you. Madam Chair, back to you. My concerns are, I too have a concern or an issue over slope. Where the existing house sits and the small area that they're attempting to include is not, it does not appear to me to be a real effect on the slope. If you had 2 acres and you have 1 acre that drops off a cliff, it doesn't mean that there's a hardship there where you're actually going to be building. I think the contour lines that I've been able to see really does not appear that the steepness is really a condition. Second thing is again, and I think Mr. Lloyd just clarified it, that TRPA is really not an issue as to their decisions of what they make. I do appreciate the input from the neighbors, that they don't have a problem with this, but the neighbors in and of themselves really, in this situation, are not the deciding factor. They can't approve this project. It has to come back to the Board of Adjustment. And the Board of Adjustment is actually guided by NRS and Washoe County Code. And I believe staff's presentation has been thorough in regards that there are not really any exceptional topography conditions for me that would allow this to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen?
Nothing new to add. I concur completely with my colleague,
Okay,
Mr. Thomas. Thank you.
great. Okay, do we have a motion? Someone like to make a motion?
This is Rob. I'll make a motion. I move that after giving reasonable consideration of the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustments deny the variance case number WPVAR 22-0001 for Susan Hertz Callahan Family Trust et al., and being unable to make all 5 required findings in accordance with Washoe County Development Code. And I just wanted to add, I don't see a special circumstances on this.
Okay, second?
Don Christensen, for the record, I second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Could you read the appeal procedure, Trevor, please?
Yes, thank you. Most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you are aggrieved and disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is loading onto my computer here. Blue line is almost to the end. Okay. Oh my God. Oh. This is special use permit case number WSUP 21-0028, Detmers Major Grading. And Roger, you're the staff?
I am indeed. Again, for the record, Roger Pelham with Washoe County Planning. Madam Chair, members of the board, we have a request for a special use permit for major grading. Major grading is defined as those things that are above minor grading. In this case, there are several thresholds that have been exceeded. What you see here is a picture of the subject site looking north from Lone Tree Lane. As you can see, there's substantial disturbance here in the foreground, and in the background you can even see some equipment there further to the north. This special use permit is a request to allow grading of approximately 2.1 acres of land, excavation of approximately 1,800 cubic yards of earthen material, and this is to rectify illegal grading that was done within about the past year without having first obtained the appropriate building and grading permits. This is located on the north side of Lone Tree Lane, here west of Lakeside Drive, as shown on the vicinity map. This is an overhead photo from the Washoe County mapping system, which shows the condition of the parcel prior to the grading being done. As you can see, because we have a water course going down, there's a fair amount of water, so we have essentially complete coverage by vegetation prior to the grading having been done. This site plan shows what is proposed by the applicant. And forgive me for taking a little bit of time here. There are a number of nuances to this permit that need to be sort of fleshed out. And I'm going to try to do this in as slow and methodical manner as I can manage. And what I want to do is I want to start with the upper left-hand corner. That's going to be the northwest corner. And what I'd like to point out is that we have a driveway coming from the neighboring parcel to the west. That parcel of land is also owned by this applicant, okay? I will note one of the options that could have been undertaken is they could have erased that line. That was actually one of the things I suggested early on. This would have been all one parcel. That would have actually put this under, would have made it a little easier in several ways that we're going to get to a little bit later on. But what they've done there is they have created a driveway coming from the parcel with their dwelling over here to this new parcel. And then that driveway is proposed to come down, that is to say south, cross that water conveyance, that is not a natural creek, that is a ditch, okay? And then up to the new driveway that is proposed to come there off the north side of Lone Tree Lane. Thank you, Lacey. Well, good work with the pointer there, thank you. What I would like to note is that, again, here in the upper upper left-hand corner, the northwest corner. The existing contours, or what I should say were the pre-existing contours, are a little light. They are dashed. This shows up a little better in the site plan that's in your staff report. But that has all been graded, that has been smoothed out, coming sort of down lower into elevation, and sort of created a more or less flat area in the north central portion of that parcel of land. That north central parcel, part of the parcel of land is also where the applicant has constructed horse stables and horse corrals. Those stables may have required building permits. Those permits were not obtained. And essentially, any detached accessory structure that's greater than 200 square feet in size requires the approval of a building permit. Because we don't have a permit, I don't know whether they're above or below 200 square feet. So as we come further south, we get to a little bridge that is proposed there. Okay, we have a water conveyance, that thickly dashed line there in the middle. And again, what we can see, particularly to the right-hand side, further to the east, you can see where that has been sort of flattened out. You see the much lighter pre-existing contours, and then the darker solid contours where that has been flattened out, whatnot, and then more steeply sloped. Again, that has been done more or less already. The bridge has not been constructed, the driveway has not been constructed. That amount of grading has basically already been done. We don't know exactly what's there right now because that's not a requirement. What is what the contours were and what they are proposed to be at the end. Again, this is a little difficult. We've got a lot of little moving parts here. And then as we continue further south, we see the new driveway that is proposed. That has not been constructed. What I would point out, though, is that on the north side of that proposed driveway, we have a retaining wall that is outside of the front yard setback, that is taller than 4.5 feet. Okay, a retaining wall is limited to a maximum height of 4.5 feet within the front yard setback area. It complies with that. And then we have yet another retaining wall here on sort of the southwest corner. Again, that's to create that step because there is a substantial drop in elevation from Lone Tree Lane down to the ditch. The applicant is now coming in essentially after the fact to do a couple of things. The first is to rectify the illegal grading, get the appropriate approvals, but also to do additional grading. And that additional grading and development really has to do with the creation of that new driveway on the south side and crossing of the water conveyance, okay? Because again, that part has not been constructed to date. Because that has not been done, as we get a little later in the staff report, what you'll know is that I have provided a couple of 3 different options, one of which is to go ahead and allow that as it's been proposed. Another is to not allow that, at least under the current approval, which would greatly reduce the amount of grading necessary, okay? I know there's going to be more questions. I'm trying to hit this as thoroughly as I can. But that being said, here we have a couple of... Thank you. We have a couple of photographs here. You can see the horse stables there. You can see the additional horse trailer equipment and whatnot. Sort of in the foreground of that left photo, you can see the water conveyance. Again, right now it's very, very steep. Those slopes have been graded very, very steeply adjacent to that. And then here, and that would be looking north. And essentially, if you turned 90 degrees sort of left, you would be looking just almost due west along Lone Tree Lane. And you can see here right in the foreground, this is looking west, and there's the Sierras there. You can see that it's still relatively heavily vegetated. That portion really hasn't been disturbed. That is essentially the area where the new driveway is proposed to be constructed. That is to say, the second new driveway. The first one, the one that was done without the permits, actually does show in that left-hand photo in the sort of the left upper corner. Thank you. A couple more. Again, we're looking just a little more closely in. You can see some of the spoil piles there. We have another trailer. And then again, off to the right, you have a little bit broader view. You can see the driveway that was constructed without permits. You can see the horse stables there, and then again, the equipment. This is just kind of giving you a broader view looking north from Lone Tree. So there are a number of difficulties. And I will acknowledge we've taken many illegal grading after the fact, special use permits before this board. None of us enjoy this process. So the reason we have a grading code, its purpose is to set standards that minimize the disruption of the natural landscape. That's very difficult to do in a case where that grading has already been done without the appropriate permits having been reviewed beforehand. The purpose, as stated by the applicant, is to essentially create a new pasture to clear the vegetation that was there, create a pasture and horse stalls and whatnot. There is, however, no primary use proposed for the site. A primary use would be something like a dwelling or even a commercial stable or something like that. We don't have that here. What we have is an accessory use. That is to say, pasture, okay? And that is accessory to the main use being the dwelling on the adjacent parcel to the west. Substantial grading would be required for the new driveway coming right off of Lone Tree Lane, including retaining walls. We also have the problem that grading appears from the plans submitted to have been done on the neighboring parcel to the north. That is a parcel of land that is not owned by the applicant. Because of that, we have several different conditions of approval that either they would have to restore that section or get an easement or do a boundary line adjustment or do something such that it would make it legal for them to essentially traverse on the other person's property. Could be by, moving that line so that it becomes part of their property or getting an easement or doing something of that nature, or restoring that back to its previous condition. And again, those are the three sort of options available for that grading that was done on the neighboring parcel. We have a condition to address the horse stables. Now, detached accessory structures are permissible on an adjacent parcel if they are under common ownership. That is written in the singular. That's an exception that is written into the development code. So one is permissible if appropriate permits are obtained. And so we have a condition to require those permits, assuming approval is granted. We did have several public comments. These have all been provided to you. One is from David and Pamela Castanola, I believe, and that is essentially in favor. And we have one from Brian D. Carson, also in favor. We have some concerns, and sort of a very neutral letter, but a concern expressed by the Frost Ranch Association. Their concern is primarily that the water conveyance not be impeded. And we're in a desert state. That's an important thing. And in some cases, my recommendation to you is if you go towards an approval, that you also include their condition. And this is a condition that they have requested there under number 1. And essentially that requires that the water conveyance not be impeded. We have 3 options available to us this afternoon. The first is to approve the special use permit as requested by the applicant. I have provided another option to approve the project but eliminate that second driveway, the new driveway. And that would, of course, substantially reduce the amount of grading overall. And the third option is denial. As with all of our discretionary actions, the action that you take is based upon a series of findings. And analysis of those findings, of course, constitutes sort of the meat and potatoes of my staff report. Has to be consistent. Well, what they want to do is not inconsistent with the area plan. That's okay. Improvements. Yes, necessary roadways and whatnot are there. Appropriate drainage, those can all be done and are in fact addressed in the plans submitted. Site suitability. This becomes a little more difficult. The site was substantially vegetated beforehand, and now all of that vegetation, at least in certain areas in the central portion, has been removed. Had we been able to look at those plans beforehand, we probably would have addressed that to sort of keep some of that vegetation, which of course holds the soil down, inhibits erosion, dust, those sorts of things. This is something that is left to the board for your consideration, your wisdom. Is this suitable? Issuance not detrimental. Because substantial grading was done without having first obtained the appropriate permits, it is possible, particularly given the location of the water conveyance. May I ask for 5 minutes additional?
Sure, go ahead, Roger.
Okay, and then of course we will grant that same extension to the applicant as well. Thank you. I'm sorry, let me reset my brain. So because of the amount of grading that was done, particularly in orientation to the water conveyance, it can be seen as a detriment, particularly if those very steep slopes that are there tend to collapse. We get more dirt into the water, greater turbidity, those things. On the other hand, the plans submitted show ways that that can be mitigated and certainly would be. And we also have additional conditions of approval, very stringent ones, that would probably mitigate that. However, given the situation as it exists as a whole, I'm not confident. I'm not confident that even compliance with all the conditions of approval, that the finding of issuance not detrimental can be made. It may or may not. And effect on the military installation, there aren't any around, so we're good there. This is a particularly difficult evaluation. Given that, and I am not confident that issuance not detrimental can be made. I am recommending denial. I have two different types of motions, as I said, for approval. I have one for denial. I have tried to lay out the circumstances as clearly as I can. I know that there are going to be questions, but with that, in the end, my evaluation does come down as a recommendation of denial, which would put us in a position where code enforcement would simply continue. We have a code enforcement complaint. The code enforcement process has been stayed during the time that this special use permit has been under consideration. And should this be denied, we would simply continue forward with the code enforcement action, and they would be required essentially to put the area back to its previous condition. That would be by means of what's called a remediation order, which would be approved through the county engineer. So, if the board in its wisdom decides for approval, in either way, I would ask that you include the condition from the frost Ranch Association, as noted previously. And we have a possible motion for denial as well. I know those are included in your staff report, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, Roger. I see, what our procedure is these days is to hear from the applicant and then have questions for the applicant so is the applicant available to give a presentation?
Yes, we have Stacy Higgins here in chambers.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Board. Stacy Huggins for the record with Wood Rogers, representing the property owners and the applicant in this case. I do want to mention that they are here and hope to address the board at the end of my presentation. I think Roger did a great job covering the project. This map just gives you some idea where it is in an aerial form. A couple of things I wanted to just touch on real quick. We are looking for a special use permit for grading, as Roger mentioned, that includes a new driveway coming off of Lone Tree Lane. A little background on this property. The property owners bought these two parcels back in 2020. At the time, what you see on that aerial is what those properties looked like. When they bought those, there were already some signs of problems down in the ditch area. So their grading started in an effort to do the right thing. There had been signs of flooding associated with that creek area or the ditch area. And then also the following summer after they moved in, there were some younger folks that were found in that area smoking and littering on the ground. And they were very concerned as the property owners, not only for flooding, but for fire hazard burning up or down that ditch. And there's quite a few residences in this area. So given those hazards, they did grade and access down to the lower parcel initially to clean out the dead brush around the creek and discourage those problems. The grading does not negatively impact the surrounding character of the area. Again, that's finding 4 in the special use permits. The real point I want to make here is that as private citizens in the county, they did not know that they couldn't move any dirt on their property. They were not aware that moving dirt to clean up property that they own was illegal. And so they acknowledge, and they will tell you in their own words, they acknowledge that what they did is wrong, but they didn't know. And you don't know what you don't know. And they're trying to remedy that now. As I mentioned, and Roger mentioned too, the driveway in the northwest corner. Does this have a pointer? Is there a? We have one. If you could just. Oh, that's okay. I can just talk through it. So in that northwest corner, it does appear on the mapping now that it is over a parcel line on the adjacent property owners to the north property. I want to just make a note that there is a boundary line adjustment sitting up in Washoe County Survey's office waiting for its final signature to be recorded so that that driveway issue is dealt with. So that issue can be put to rest. The property owners did not realize when they purchased those two properties that that corner was not on their property because the fence from the adjacent property owner did not go that direction. So they thought it was theirs. Again, you only know what you know. The mapping did not show any difference. So they are and have been trying to rectify that grading on neighboring parcel issue. While they were clearing the drainage way or the ditch area, they did admittedly identify an area they thought would be great for future horses and shelters and a pasture area. So while they were down there, again, not knowing they shouldn't be moving that much dirt, they graded out an area to put their horses, which they already had, on that property. So you can see on this picture that shows kind of generally where they were going. Again, I do not believe what they did there visually detrimental to the public or the surrounding area. Just looking quickly at the slope map for this property, you can see really this site is extremely flat in all the places that they have either graded previously or are proposing to grade. With the exception of the creek crossing, you can see here really the impact to the slopes. They're all greater or less, sorry, the impacted slopes are less than 20%. So looking at the actual grading plan that was submitted from the engineer on this project, you can see, as Roger, and I don't want to get into the same specific details he did, but I do want to talk about the proposed grading for the driveway that connects to Lone Tree. If this piece of property were developed as its own single-family residential property, the driveway and the tie to Lone Tree would be in nearly the exact same place. So what they're asking for is not uncommon. It's not an inappropriate location, and I believe it provides the least amount of impact to the site in terms of the grading and the access to the site if it were a standalone individual private residence. Was there a question?
No.
Okay. And so the overall design, right, coming from the current residence house and connecting to Lone Tree was really intended to provide on-site circulation for their horse trailer. They wanted to be able to get from their property through the other property and back out because the access on their current parcel is very tight. And so trying to maneuver a large horse trailer through that area, and they didn't build that home, so they're trying to work with what they had, was a challenge. So they were looking to build this secondary driveway to Lone Tree in an effort to provide the circulation through both properties. Roger talked about the retaining walls. They are within code. They have been designed to meet all the code standards. The rolled erosion control, we talked about revegetation and the removal of the existing vegetation on this site. There is erosion control planned as part of the proposed plan, and it will be used until the site is revegetated. There will be a water truck on site for temporary irrigation and dust control. I want to note that these proposed changes, either what has been done or what is proposed to be done, do not change the flow of the creek. So they have no intention of changing irrigation or how the ditch is diverted. It will not impact the folks downstream that are currently getting water from there. And in fact, some of these changes will reduce sediment runoff going through that creek now once the site is revegetated. Just a quick touch on those findings. I know Roger touched on them too. And again, although some of the grading was done without the SUP, the applicant is fully aware of the code requirements now and understands what has to happen for them to move forward. Again, that's why we're here today. And they are in complete agreement with the conditions of approval that have been provided. We believe all the findings can be made and that the proposed grading, including the driveway to Lone Tree, are not detrimental to the neighborhood or the character of the area and therefore should be approved with the driveway to Lone Tree, acknowledging the conditions of approval. I do have two questions. One, I was not able to read from my seat in the back of the room what the additional condition from the HOA said. I would appreciate knowing that. And then I would ask the board if it would be okay for the applicant to take my remaining time to talk about what happened on their site. That concludes my presentation. Madam Chair, if you are acceptable to the applicant speaking, I would appreciate it.
Sure. And then I think we're going to take a break after that.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yes.
For the record, my name is Chelsea Detmers. My husband Jordan and I own 0 Lone Tree and the adjacent 4145. Most of the time, I'm that horse trailer driver that gets to navigate through the tight space. We realized it would be difficult to make a decision given a staff report and recommendation without any background. So with that, I'd like to give a brief synopsis. We are multi-generation Nevadans who grew up here in Reno with a love for Western heritage, preserving and promoting its way of life. We love horses. They're an integral part of our lives. Many would call them our children. As you can see from the provided parcel maps, 4145 does not allow for any horse setup. With that limiting factor and having horses with nowhere to go, we purchased 0 Lone Tree. We had and still have long-term hopes of being able to use Zero Lone Tree for our horses to include an arena, pasture space, and a barn dominium dwelling. Our plan also requires access from Zero Lone Tree to the main road via a driveway as access from 4145. It's a very steep pitch, it's tight, it's not safe in and out. There's dead space at the top of the driveway where you can't see traffic that's making its way to the park. An accident will happen. When we began exploring down in Zero Lone Tree parcel, we quickly realized the lot had not been maintained in years. The overgrowth and dead vegetation was overwhelming. It covered the parcel from edge to edge. To call it a jungle of dead matter, decay, and trash would be an understatement. We noticed the car volume up Lone Tree and that our parcel seemed to have been the off-road dump for years, with people throwing trash down into the unkempt area. We even have a mattress and the entire backseat of the bench from a van. The tipping point came, however, as you heard, when my husband saw a young adult flicking a cigar, something along that, down over the edge and into the vegetation. We knew something had to be done to mitigate the risk of the fire. Not only was our parcel in danger, but our home and the two neighbor parcels, they would be in danger if a fire happened. We did call the county to see if anything was required to clear the debris, the overgrowth, and we're told no, nothing is needed for clearing and grubbing. It seems sadly this may have been incorrect or incomplete information that we were given and to which we relied on in good faith. As the space opened up, we saw that it was flatter than could be seen through the growth and had a flat area at the base of the hill, and determined we could use that for our temporary horse corrals and temporary shelter. From there, yes, we did continue working on the property, and we do not deny that in order in our effort to map that out, we proceeded in what we now have become aware of illegal grading. We do know that the barn dominium work and the driveway to Lone Tree, we would need a contractor and engineer team that would lead it and navigate the requirements and the applications. However, at the time doing the other work, clearing and mapping out, we did not know there was a threshold of acreage or volume of earth disturbed that would require a grading permit. We made a mistake, and we're very sorry for the extra time, staff involvement, and headache this causes the county and yourselves. We were issued a stop work order in April of 2021 and immediately complied. We spoke almost daily with the gentleman in code enforcement to ensure compliance. We hired an engineer to draft the scope of work and put in for the grading permit. After the permit and plans were applied for, we went back and forth approximately 3 months with changes and revisions in order to meet code. And then at some point, we were told that this needed to move to a special use permit. This was not us having disregard for the process or the system. Instead, we made a mistake and have had an extreme learning curve trying to navigate the county requirements to come into compliance. We can understand the staff report concern to deny the project should we have continued without care after coming into contact with county officials, but we have been working to meet compliance and gain approval for what is now just under 1 year. We are very sorry again and can assure you and the community that we have our eyes wide open and understand there is a process for literally everything and will comply. We appreciate the hard job you have to ensure compliance is maintained to protect the county, its resources, and residents, and that you must look very closely at perceived rule breakers on a case-by-case basis in order to dissuade others from doing the same. We, however, have been educated and will be an advocate for the county and a process and hope that others can learn from our error. Had we come to this meeting today via the appropriate channel with permits applied and plans in hand before any work began, I would hope that you would have been as excited as we are and our neighbors are for this parcel improvement, adding value to the neighborhood and enjoying a Western treasure, horses. We've been working towards this meeting for just under 12 months from the date we received the stop work, and would be very grateful for your support to continue, with the knowledge that we have retained pertinent professionals to ensure this is successful and to attest that we understand and will meet all operational conditions as required during the life of this permit. I have a question in general about this process because I'm very interested in educating myself. From what I've seen, the goal of the special use permit is to review the plan for potential harmful impacts to adjacent properties or areas and to assure the applied use meets zoning standards, and if impacts are identified, to allow the applicant the ability to eliminate or mitigate them. Per the key community stakeholders, both residents and every needed county service that your staff reached out to, not a single one had an opposition to the plan, with a few that required conditions, which includes the driveway access to Lone Tree. Even the staff's own report, for the most part, showed no issue with the 5 critical areas for plan approval per page 13, aside from the concern of, I believe it was retaining the slope, something towards the end he said. If we can send civilians to the space, I think we can mitigate erosion on a slope appropriately for following the plan. So I would just question why staff recommendation would be so strong to deny. Thank you so much for your consideration. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions for staff or the applicant?
Madam Chair, this is Don. I
Yes, go ahead, Don.
have some comments and questions for the applicant.
Okay.
Excuse me, for the,
Oh,
not the representative, but the, thank you. Chelsea, if I
Chelsea
recall.
Detmers,
Yes,
for the
thank
record,
you.
yes.
I want to thank you for all the work that you've put into doing this project, albeit much of it without proper permitting. I want to assure you that this board is not interested in all in enforcement or punishment, if you will. Our job is to strictly look at the application for the SUP and the grading permits. And I want to assure you that we're not adversary to what you're, or adverse to what you're doing. I'll just let you understand, maybe you can tell me a little more about it, though. In my background in lending, there was only 2 criteria in granting a request for a loan, and this is very similar to that. We are going to either grant or deny you a special use permit and grading permits, and then the criteria for you performing under those conditions is based on really 2 things. One is your history and of compliance, because you have some strict conditions here that may not be that easy to comply with. And the second thing is, of course, your willingness to comply. And that's kind of an odd thing, how to gauge your willingness. Many people run out of money or whatever, and it's not our business to get into that. But my concerns as a board member would be your history is not good, and your willingness to comply, kind of iffy. You know, you guys are not professionals at this, and I think you've gotten good advice, but is there anything that you can add to that would tell me, well, let me back up. History is history. Okay, we can't change that. But your willingness to comply, and I'm really concerned about mitigating erosion and the condition of the creek and the downstream users of the creek. Can you give me some kind of assurance that you will be able to see this thing through and comply with all of the conditions as stated?
Thank you for the opportunity to respond for that. I'm not sure if I need to say my name again, Chelsea Detmers. Mr. Christensen, in other fields that I work in, I don't know what the options are for the county. I'm a problem solver and I can throw a solution. Jordan and I are committed to seeing this project through. It's our home. That's been our dream location for many years. And in other industries, there may be things like an escrow account, something like that, of which if there's ever that intention with the county for depositing funds to make sure that the plan and specifically the plans for erosion were going to be funded over time, we would be happy to consider adding that in so the county could have assurances that the funds are there to mitigate the problem through the life of the permit. I don't know if that's an option, but that's something that comes to mind. You don't know us. The people listening don't know us. Hopefully through proof of the last 12 months and any interaction or engagement with the people in the county whom we worked with, we'll say we were fast, we were responsive, they heard from us same days. Anything they asked for wattle bags, mitigation, were done immediately. Even many have said, you guys have been some of the easiest people to work with. So all we can do is continue forward on that foot, work with our professionals, and understand that that permit is revocable at any time, and we need to prove ourselves every step going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I have some questions, if I may.
yes, go ahead, Mr. Stanley.
Yeah, for the applicant, for the applicant, yeah. And these are kind of straightforward, smallish questions. You say you have a BLA in process?
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, currently the other owner, so there was a fence put in years ago. He put the fence in himself. His name's Frank Cassis. Basically, when we found out, when we had survey done, this was, much more, this was after the fact, trying to work with engineering and everything. We ended up going and talking to him. We've been working on the boundary adjustment for, I don't know, at least six months or so, 7, 8 months, 9 months. And currently, right now, we have all the signatures. I dropped it off yesterday to Wayne Handruck, at the survey department here at the county. We're waiting for it to get recorded. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've done a BLA or two, and I may have been just real lucky, but they seem pretty fast.
I think with COVID,
6 months, you must have drawn the slow card.
Yeah. So I turned it in, we finished everything, and I would probably say, what was it? It was August. Probably, I think early August. I missed the deadline. I think it's the 8th. Does that sound correct, Roger?
One day
Yeah.
a month.
So I missed the 8th. Anyways, September 8th is when we turned it in, so from here.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then follow up, another little question. And like everybody else, I think, what you're doing seems admirable and reasonable in terms of land use and that sort of thing. So as everyone has mentioned here, including the planner, that's not what we're here about, whether or not it's a great idea. At what point did you find out you were not in compliance and you had several issues to address?
So in April, I don't remember the exact date, but Kevin with Code Enforcement, I'm not sure of his last name, he put a stop work on our front door, zip tied it to our front door. We seized everything completely, 100%. We stopped. I notified him, I called him, I think the day after, when I actually saw it on my front door. We go through our garage, so of course I didn't even see it. And I've been working with him until we started, I hired Blake with Westex Engineering, and that's kind of how we're here today.
Did you say Kevin, by the way?
Yes, Kevin.
Costa ring a bell for a
Yes,
last name?
Costa, Kevin
Okay.
Costa. That's it.
Did they mention why they were there?
They did not.
I mean, here I am.
I actually asked, and I didn't hear that there was a complaint from, an adjacent homeowner or our neighboring folks, but I'm assuming, there's people, other people building new homes in the area on certain lots, and so I'm just assuming that he drove by, saw it, and realized we didn't,
Which
have
is
the
what
proper permit.
Which is what I did here recently.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many permits or missed legal steps you have up until now?
I don't. Like Chelsea stated, I called in, I talked to somebody at the county, I'm not sure who it was. I wish I had that, however, I don't. That I asked to clear and grub the property, right? It was, for fire mitigation. It was a big, big concern.
Sure.
And, and so I began clearing. My dad is retired, same thing. He was pretty much helping me while I'm obviously at work. And, and then one thing led to another and moved more dirt than we should.
So if you did it in the proper and orderly and straight up way, you're not sure how many?
I'm sorry, yes, to answer your question, I apologize. No, I'm not sure.
Okay. So it wasn't until Mr. Costa showed up at your front door that you knew that there were some things?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, sir.
And this, I'm going to ask this question, and it may be a Roger question, but in fact, I'll save it, but yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Detmers, can you state your name for the record?
Yes, I apologize. Jordan Detmers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
I still have some questions for the applicant. So if you can come back up.
Didn't make it.
Okay.
You stated earlier that there were transients on this property. Were they down there with vehicles, or were they walking, or how were they getting down to that piece of property?
This is Chelsea Detmers for the record. So Lone Tree Lane dead ends into a park, a trailhead. So it's busy as far as people coming by. We personally have not had a history of seeing anyone down in the lower parcel since we had moved into the home, but you do see the traffic and things going out of cars, and it was people walking by on the street, which is pretty high elevation above the parcel as they're walking the neighborhood. I don't know if transient is the correct name. They could be people who live there, but so there's not any encampment or anything down there, but it's a very well-traveled road. Does that answer your question?
So there really wasn't, you're not aware of actually anyone transient or otherwise that was actually down on that property?
It's right on the roadway, so they throw things right off the roadway and it goes right down into the edge of that parcel.
Okay. You said in your earlier conversations we had that the walls are now they meet code compliance. How do you know that?
This is Chelsea Detmers again. What I was speaking to is that I understand one of the reservations for the staff to give an approval on this is just concern of how to mitigate the slopes on the ditches. So my comment was not to intend to say that those in their present state are in any type of compliance, but we understand that anything is achievable with time, money, effort, and energy, and are certain we can bring them into a compliance for future standards.
Okay, so are there walls on that piece of property at this point in time?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, Stacey.
My name is Jordan Detmers for the record. No, there is not. Currently, we were actually advised from Roger originally, we were in the 4-foot setback is what it was, sorry, the front yard setback. And our retaining walls were not in compliance on the original drawing of our engineering. We have since adjusted that, and everything that I know of, talking with Roger and the county on the engineering side is, in compliance now on our engineering map.
Okay, so there isn't any walls there, so
No.
when you stated earlier that the walls were now in compliance, they're not there yet?
They're not there yet,
Okay.
that's correct.
Planned walls.
The planned walls, yes, I apologize.
Did you, prior to grading and everything going on, did you contact the neighbors, your surrounding neighbors, and let them know you were going to be grading all that?
Yes, my neighbor below is, his name is Brian Cason. He's an engineer for the city of Sparks. I've made neighbors, friends with these neighbors, and just, the clearing, grubbing, he was aware of it. We talked multiple times, so, yeah.
Okay. And see which ones else I got here real quick. When you were grading on that north property, you didn't have your property surveyed ahead of time? You just graded, you thought you owned it, so you just went ahead and graded?
That is correct. I started just basically ripping out all the vegetation. And when we purchased the home, the map that we had from when we purchased it, enclosed and everything, showed that that was our parcel. You know, and the fence was on that side. Like I said, his name's Frank Cassis, and his fence that he put up 30 some odd years ago. And when I talked to him, he actually, you know, I requested that, you know, is it possible that we can do a boundary adjustment? He said, absolutely. He said, I think you're wrong. Actually, I think that's your property and that's not mine. And, yeah, he ended up, you know, being okay with it, and we have a boundary adjustment, you know, in process, which is almost finalized completely.
I think my last question is if we can put the map back up, there was an actual aerial picture that showed what the property looks like now. If we can pull that up real quick, I have just a quick question. Sure, yeah, that one will do. Is that a true representation of what that property looks like now?
No,
No.
Okay,
I've cleared more.
you've cleared more.
Yes.
So although it's the cleared back area to the, let's see, well, I guess to the right of the house, how much more of that land have you cleared?
I would say, I mean, majority of the land is clear of the vegetation other than what Roger spoke on, up closer to Lone Tree, kind of where Lone Tree Lane is, you know, is listed on the map right there. That area is still, you know, that's pretty much where we got the stop work, so.
And any of the trees.
You know,
that ran in
the
ditch.
boundary between my house and the property kind of starts, that's Bellhaven Street, just at the bottom of the picture. Just to the right of that, right there at that tree, fairly close to that, if you draw a straight line straight through to the back of the grass, kind of right there.
So that piece of property, for the most part, would it be safe to say that the piece of property in question is almost totally cleared?
Yes, I would probably say at least 80, 85% of vegetation.
Okay. And last but not least, your representative, Stacy Higgins? You indicated that there was flooding in that area in the past. Do you happen to know what was the cause of the flooding? Are we attributing the cause of the flooding to the vegetation that was on site? Or are we talking about just an atmospheric river that flooded everything or could flood everything?
Stacy Huggins for the record.
I guess what I'm asking for is if you can make the connection or the nexus that by taking the vegetation out of that property, it would prevent flooding.
So I am not able, because I wasn't on the site when that happened, and the applicants didn't own the property when there had been flooding. But when they were down there, there were signs of debris that had come down through that area that they acknowledged that appeared to be flooding of some sort related, or a higher watermark. I don't want to suggest that necessarily it came out of the banks, but there had been debris movement coming down through that creek area. And so they were concerned about movement or impacts further down if they did not clear the dead brush along the creek. Is that a fair statement, Jordan?
Yes, and if Jordan Detmers for the record, if I can touch on that. So our property where our house is, Steamboat Ditch basically wraps our entire property. If you're familiar with the area. When they turn the water on from, I want to say it's May 1st, May time, and they cut it off around October, you know, there's a substantial amount of water that runs all the way through Steamboat Ditch down to Quillisea and, you know, all the way, pretty much all the way around. You know, I think we're pretty familiar with it. But when they turn that on, there's just, you know, it's not a ton of water. It's, I couldn't give you the exact, but what was happening is the the slopes were just washing out. And at one point, from what I was told, was that there's a, pretty big flood. I don't remember, I want to say, was it 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there. And that's what happened, and kind of just wiped things out. But this has been getting wiped out for years, 30 plus years at least, and this was a pretty big issue. So, and there's two irrigation pipes that run on the property that are adjacent to Lone Tree itself, the road that's running down, that feed, Lower Holcomb Ranch area and all these people that have water rights. I don't have any water rights, so I'm not pulling anything off of it. I'm just repairing it, and which I have. I've spent about $10,000 to $15,000 just repairing these pipes because they just had pretty much Band-Aids put on them for, at least 10 years. And I've repaired them so that they're not leaking on the property anymore. There's just, because it was destroying, my land basically, and washing it into the creek, and it was pretty bad. So.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions right now.
Okay,
I have one.
yes,
This is Rob.
Rob, yours?
Yeah. Hey, so Jordan, question on that. Can you put that map up that he was just talking about?
The same one?
Yeah, the same one. So show me where the ditch goes on your property. There's a pointer sitting right there in front of by the mic. It's a laser pointer. Just don't hit my eye. Show me where the ditch goes on your property, if you could.
So are you talking about the Steamboat Ditch?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Steamboat Ditch that kind of
Okay.
wraps this around. I don't know if you can see that. My laser just went out,
And
sorry.
then it goes over this way, correct?
It does, and so it comes right here. It passes under this road right here, as you can see.
Okay.
That runs down towards Quillisea and, all the neighboring properties and things like that. I don't exactly know where it ends up, but basically back here, this is the unnamed creek that runs all the way through. Sorry, I'm a little off on my
Does
point.
that have water in it all the time?
Just when they turn it on between May. Right now, it's just runoff from the snow,
Okay.
but it's very, very minimal.
But there is water going down there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and only at times, when they turn on the, the steamboat,
Okay.
there's a gate right here that basically feeds a little bit more, all the way through.
Now, is that what the homeowner association is concerned with?
That will-
gate?
No.
What's that?
Okay.
The
Sorry, maybe I
homeowners,
misunderstand.
well, I'm sorry, I refer to them as the Frost Ranch or the Ditch Company.
Yeah.
So the Ditch Company, from what we have spent time speaking with them, the free flowing, the overflow, which is like water spillage, is not their concern. This helps reduce flooding that goes to this lower parcel. What the
Okay.
Ditch Company or the Frost Ranch, I believe, and their recommendations, they're referring to, there's a pipe that's running this spot. And that's what takes water down to all the below parcels. So what they're asking is that we don't make any big alterations or changes or disrupt the flow through that pipe area
Okay.
that's running to them.
And then where were you gonna put that new driveway?
So the driveway, I'll let you.
me show.
Yeah. I'm left-handed.
So you see right where Lone Tree Lane is on the map?
Yeah.
It's gonna roughly come down in line with this and end up right around here. It'll be a
Okay.
gradual drive down across the bridge in this area. I have actually currently sleeved, so the pipes are PVC right now. They're about an 8-inch PVC piping, and I sleeved it with 12-inch CMP, steel CMP, in order to, make, so there's no issue for a driveway or anything else. That's the neighbor down the road, which has been approved. He just got a C of O, I would say less than a year ago. He'll have the exact same type, he has the exact same type of driveway. And because his property is kind of in a, lower bowl, I guess you want to call it. And so that's what he's done, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I know that does. It kind of gives you a little visual of the area. Okay, so the gates that they're talking about would be right up in that area.
Yeah, so there's actually a gate right here that currently runs under my road. It's the exact same scenario when the prior homeowner built my property. It's the exact same scenario that'll be right here for the new one. There's also 2 other gates over here that feed down, and that's kind of what they're talking about. I've talked to the people, and they've seen me out there repairing is what happened, and some of the other homeowners that have just, they do it on their own, right? They don't have funding or anything, and they all just kind of pitch in and take care of it. At different times I've legitimately found, there's a 85-year-old neighbor that walks down there, hikes down there with a cane and tries to clear the debris and things out because it wasn't done correctly. And I'm proposing to, fix it, spend the money to deal with this so it's just not destroying all this land, because that's truly what happened here. And kind of why I started, clearing it. Yes, I did it illegally, on the grading, and I truly apologize for that. But the, it's the funding for it is humbly say it is not an issue, to finish the project and get it completed. So.
Okay. And so you're dedicated to taking care of the gates and making sure that nobody downstream has any
I do.
issues with if it gets approved?
Yep, absolutely. And I help all these neighbors out. Again, I don't have water rights off of any of this. This is just, you can call it out of the kindness of my heart, that I help these people out. I never have an issue. They walk on my property all the time. They come across, walk across my grass right here to reach one of them. I just had my landscaper, for instance, make them a nice pretty trail, and cut it all back and so it's dealt with, I don't want flooding, and there's been substantial flooding that has happened prior to, my wife and I owning the property.
Yeah.
So,
Down through the middle, right?
yes.
Okay.
It runs right there. I have a bridge that somebody put in that's right here.
Yeah.
So you have to cross a bridge with 3 60-inch culverts, and it was all done
Oh, wow. Okay.
professionally, and actually up to, it's all been engineered and everything, so.
Okay.
But like I said, that was prior to me owning it. I have done nothing else on it but just
Just clear the brush.
cleared and cleaned up. Yeah,
Okay. All
I
right.
just tried to mitigate issues.
No, that's cool. Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Madam Chair, this is
Yes.
Clay Thomas. Just a point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
As I understand it, looking at this map, are there 3 sources of water going across your property? You have the Steamboat Ditch there to the left of your property. It comes down almost to the front of your driveway and then makes a turn south. Is that
Right,
correct?
which comes through
Okay.
here, under the street.
Just on the other side of your driveway, continuing in an easterly direction on the north side of the street, you put in corrugated pipe or something?
They had it in.
Okay.
All this piping was done from the ditch company.
Okay,
To send water down.
and that is part of the ditch also? That's
Yes.
transferring water or transporting water to another location
Yes, that's
from the
correct.
ditch?
Yes.
And so that's their easement then?
It is. There's a 20-foot,
Okay.
I think it's 20-foot irrigation easement, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, about midway on the vacant property is a third seasonal stream, for lack of a better term, that goes through the property. Is that right? Going from west to east?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I have one final question, I think, at least for me, for the applicants.
This recording secretary, Adrienne Albaran here. I believe she exited out. Give me one moment to get her back online.
Emergency backup.
Mr. Thomas, would you presume the chairmanship under, and we still have a quorum, we can attempt to get the chair back on, but with the question and answer, for sake of time, can you proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Large. I appreciate that. I will. Mr. Stanley, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. When I was out there looking at your property, I noticed quite a lot of the vegetation that had been graded, pushed to essentially the roadside, because I was looking over, I think calling that the hillside would be, that's optimistic too, right? I mean, that kind of cliff comes to mind. It's pretty straight down. What again, just briefly, was your ability or intention to retain that, keep that ending up, not ending up in one of the 3 waterways? As you move the vegetation out?
So I don't know if they can pull back up the engineering map, if that's possible, and kind of explain that.
Which one was that? I'm sorry.
I have No idea. I'm sorry. You can show, if you want to bring up, maybe even just,
Thank you.
I apologize.
Actually, for my purposes, just a general explanation would be fine.
So as you were standing over the property, I call it the Lone Tree Wall. You know, it's that cantilever wall, I assume, that, you know, county put in years ago, or whoever developed, you know,
Gotcha.
the area. Basically, you know, off of that, there's the map right now. You can see the wall that we've proposed. Basically, you know, I don't know what the current slope is right now, kind of where you saw that vegetation, you know, and we plan to rip that vegetation out, obviously, and, you know, landscape all of that, you know, up to the wall, which will be fully protected. You know,
Terrace it up or something.
yes, and,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
you know, that's a big open area that you can see right there, kind of where it says supercil abutment.
Right.
You know, all that.
Yeah, as I
area,
said, I
so-
was there and kind of looking over the edge.
Yeah, so,
I didn't throw anything down into your yard, though.
it's okay.
Thank you for that.
There's still trash down there. I haven't moved it because,
We left the couch.
You know, and the other question I had is, who put up on the grading, you know, I saw quite a lot of heavy equipment, or semi-heavy anyway,
yeah.
on the site. Who did the grading?
My retired dad as well as myself.
Gotcha. Who put up the horse enclosures, for want of a better term?
Chelsea and I did. They're temporary structures. They literally have pins to hold them down, you know, for the wind. It's very,
Gotcha, yeah.
so,
Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from the board?
And recording secretary, we do have Christina Hill back online.
Thank you.
My computer died. I had to plug it in.
And actually, since there was Chloe was asking if there were any more questions, I actually have a question for Roger, if that's all right at this point. Roger, you had mentioned something, if I got it right, about accessory use versus primary use. Okay, will the in-process BLA, if approved, would that ameliorate that condition, or no?
No, that really wouldn't, I'm sorry, Roger Pelham, Washington County Planning. The boundary line adjustment, if approved,
Yeah.
would simply take all of the area that has been graded and put it on the applicant's parcel, that is to say, under their legal control, which is a great benefit. We had several options, they might do that. But no, the erection of a structure on an adjacent parcel, it's still an accessory use. There is, again, that one exception that allows an accessory structure as long as it's on the same, a parcel directly adjacent to a main use, and in this case, that main use is the dwelling. Assuming that appropriate permits are obtained, that may be permissible. Again, without having seen those, I'm not certain whether they're required in this case or not.
Gotcha. You know, I'd asked them a question about how many permits or missing permits or legal shortfalls had been incurred through the entire process here. And when I was reading the proposal in your analysis, I think I ran out of fingers on one hand anyway, and I was headed north. Do you have any idea how many didn't get done?
Forgive me, let me take a moment here. And I'm gonna be looking at my planning manager as well. I'll see if I can count these as we go. Certainly, a minor grading permit,
Okay.
which, had they applied for that, we would have identified that a major grading permit was required. A building permit, probably, maybe, for the detached accessory structure. A fencing permit would not be required because the corrals are not within the front yard setback area. Well, so as far as permitting, I think that would be, there's also the challenge of storing equipment and vehicles on a parcel that otherwise does not have a main
Right.
permissive use.
Okay, but, and the bridge or the crossway or the driveway? Was that?
Hasn't been constructed yet.
Right.
It hasn't, that's proposed,
So
but
it-
has not yet been constructed.
Okay, so it would have its own.
But that would also require a building permit.
Right. And how about the grading on the other fellow's land? I know that's I mean, that.
Yes, certainly that would have
It's-
required a
It's Nevada, so. you know,
separate
gotta get
permit.
it.
Yes.
Okay, so,
Have I missed one? I'm looking at my management over here. So, yeah, 3, 4.
okay. And
Okay, and Mr. Lloyd, please, I can
Well,
see you
no,
want to say
I-
something. Please help me out here.
I'm concerned that we're getting off track and looking at past or issues that may or may not be relevant.
I'm
So if you
circling
can
back in just a
bring them
second.
back towards what's
I will
relevant.
right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if they were to actually go back and remediate those individually, is that an option that they have?
Not really, no. The amount of grading done has exceeded the thresholds, 2 or 3 of them, for a major grading permit. There are only 2 paths forward at this point. The first path is approval of a special use permit, and that's what we're considering today. The other path is what we call a remediation order. Assuming there's an approval, they have a set of conditions and they can go forward with what you decide is appropriate. If you decide no, then their path forward is to essentially take everything off, take the contours back to what they were, reseed with native vegetation, and put it back to its initial undisturbed state. And that is actually done not with a building permit. It's a thing called a remediation, or they're remediating the unpermitted work. And that is actually just done straight through the county engineer. It doesn't even come to planning.
Okay, so to repeat, not to beat a dead horse, but to repeat, it's either agree, modify, agree, or try to rebuild whatever it was before with the
Yes, to put it back to its,
native state, whatever that is.
to get as close to the pre-disturbance condition as possible. We know that it will never be a pre-disturbance
can't do it.
condition because it's been
Can't put the
disturbed.
toothpaste back in the, yeah.
An
All right,
apt
thank you very
analogy,
much.
certainly. And if I can, there was one question earlier about why code enforcement got involved. I can provide a little bit of light to that. Code enforcement is 100% complaint-based. They don't go out looking for violations. They only go after they have received a complaint. Who, what, when, the nature of that complaint, I cannot say. But Kevin Costner, our code enforcement officer, only goes out when he's been assigned to a particular location.
Okay, I think we know everything we need to know about this project, right? I mean, can we do you want to take a break, or do you want to continue with this review?
We can take a 5-minute break.
It's just her.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break and come back and bring it to the board.
Recording in progress.
We're all back, Christina.
Okay, great. So I take it we've found out everything we need to know about this project and what's the options are to approve without the new driveway, approve with the new driveway, or deny this project. So what are your thoughts?
Was there public
Do
comment?
we want to do public comment, Madam Chair?
Oh. Okay. Is there a public comment? Madam Secretary?
I have no public comment in chambers.
I do have a hand raised via Zoom. Brian Kaysen, I'm going to allow you to speak. If you could please unmute yourself.
And get your timer.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, for the record, my name is Brian Case and I am a adjacent property owner next to the Dedmers. I am just going to read the letter that I submitted. And I do want to quickly add that the issue about flooding, a lot of that did occur because of the the thick dead undergrowth that was within that creek drainage system. I was here whenever that occurred a few years back. Secondly, I'm just going to read the letter that I submitted. The Dedmers are tremendously humble, kind, and respectful neighbors. A couple years ago, they purchased the house above the adjoining lot and were excited to make improvements. They looked forward to providing grazing land for their beloved horses while striving to maintain and preserve the character within the area. Their intent was and still is to plant a multitude of trees, shrubs, and grass that will benefit a location that had been overgrown and contributed to a potential wildfire risk. As a neighbor of the adjoining lot, I am confident the improvements will bring value and beauty to the area. The grading of the parcel has provided access to the irrigation ditches running through the property for maintenance, which has helped limit water loss caused by overgrown vegetation. This has continually caused flooding to the areas below and wasted precious water resources drawn from the Truckee River. The Dedmers reduced dead vegetation and made improvements at their own expense and with permission of the ditch authorities to the failing irrigation pipes. Repairs have prevented water loss and additional evaporation from affecting downstream users. Drainage into the open unnamed creek has also been improved to keep runoff contained in the central area of the creek bed and maximize water flow within the drainage area. These improvements are beneficial to create a cleaner water resource that provides improved habitat for waterfowl and other wildlife. The decline of moisture due to changes in weather patterns, wildfires have become a heightened concern in our area. Creating defensible space and adding living, healthy vegetation to the land is one of the best methods of reducing potential fire threats. Prior to vegetation removal of the dead and dying undergrowth, the lot posed a high fire risk to all neighbors. Grading of the lot has decreased irrigation water loss, reduced flooding of adjacent properties, and greatly reduced the risk of wildfire. In addition, the Dedmers' plans for use of the parcel will improve the aesthetic look of the area while benefiting wildlife and providing the beauty of horses roaming open fields. They plan to bring back the natural beauty by planting trees, grass, and vegetation native to the area. And while the Dedmers' excitement to improve the land and provide aesthetic beauty to the community compelled them to step ahead of the process, their ultimate goal and intent was and always has been to be an asset to a community where they were born and raised and they call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other further public comment?
I have no further hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the board. So we have three options, and seems like, you know, they've done this without a permit, all this grading, and they've denuded the lot of vegetation pretty much. And I don't know how that helps flooding, but I guess removing dead vegetation from the ditch helps flooding. But I seem to think that, I don't know. I'm all for, I don't feel like we should have to put the property back to the way it was, but I think they should, you know, vegetate the area that are just barren. I mean, and I don't know what their plans are for that. I mean, that would take major irrigation and restoration to make that a pasture land and add trees, and so they say. So I suppose they would have to provide plans for that, and you know, to remediate the damage that they've done to the barren land. What are your guys' thoughts?
This is Rob. Chairman, may I speak? So,
sure.
Yes, they did some work without permits. They say they didn't know. They apologized. I personally have visited the property and I saw what they did. It doesn't look that bad. I saw the ditches. I saw the gates. I saw all that. And actually, in my opinion, they have improved the property. And with what they're saying they're going to do by putting up the trees and the bushes and the landscaping and putting in a access road the way they're going to put it in, following all the permit processes and all the other approvals that they have to get, I think it's a good project personally, and I would be inclined to approve it with the road access.
With the new driveway.
With the new access road, correct.
Right. Okay. I'm with you there. So anybody else have any other? Yes, Mr. Stanley?
Brad Stanley for the record.
Is your microphone on?
It is now. You're on.
It is
Go
now, I
ahead.
think. And I'm Brad Stanley for the record. Thank you. This is, of course, the applicants, and I'm sure they're very happy that this is the case. This is their first appearance here in front of us with this particular situation. We on the other hand, as a board, see these a lot of times, and we always complain and take great umbrage and exception to papering over past errors. And that's always been a concern with this group, with this board. And it's a tough one to thread because the other side of that is, I think all of us want a good outcome for everyone. And it doesn't seem to me that a good outcome for everyone is having a, as you put it, denuded area, or trying to plant something that has to be not just grass, but has to be theoretically indigenous species and so forth. So, I mean, it's quite a deal. I'm wondering how something like this, though, can be done. When the land itself has not been, or apparently has not been surveyed, and some of the work has taken place, accidentally or maybe even questionably on someone else's property. And by questionably, I mean, we're still not sure whose property it is. So I'm wondering how we can proceed not knowing whose land we're addressing here. But in terms of outcome, that's my major interest at this point, given the fact that they have admitted to the number of unpermitted activities. But to get this thing done, it looks like something will have to be done. I'm not coming down on the side of road or no bridge or no bridge at this yet. I would like to hear more from the assembled group.
Okay, something has to be done. That's so why not let them vegetate it and have horses there and have an extension of their property? It's like, I know it's an accessory use, but I don't know why they don't merge the two properties together and make it one parcel so that they're all, it's got a primary use, which is the residents, and then their horses. It's not like they're operating into, without that driveway, they're going to have to use their existing driveway, which is apparently too narrow. I mean, maybe they could do improvements to that to widen it. So, but I don't think that a driveway on the adjacent property that they've been working on is that big of a deal. I mean, if they build the bridge, I mean, this is substantial monetary investment in this property by building a bridge and a driveway and pasture land and irrigation, and it's a substantial investment that they're proposing to do. And hopefully they'll do it right and it'll be beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Rob for the record. Also, I think we need to look at the possible fire danger if we don't approve this. And it goes back to native vegetation. From what I saw that was left on the property of native vegetation, it appears like it could be a major fire issue.
Yeah. And fires in that area become blowtorches because it's windy.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Very dangerous.
Brad?
So the more irrigation and the more grass and the more, water in the property, I think the better. Yes, Mr. Stanley?
Sure, I believe that one of the advisory groups that did weigh in, though, was a conservancy group who did recommend the indigenous seating and so forth. And I believe that partially had to do with the trail here nearby for Ballardini. And they're concerned about non-indigenous seeds getting into the restored space there, protected space there.
Right.
Yeah, this is Rob for
Well-
the record, and that park is upstream from them, so
You're right.
it's not downstream.
That could be downwind, though.
Well, yeah, but if they take care of the property, then there's a strong possibility that they'd be using native plants, the seeds and stuff that wouldn't cause.
We should require that they use native plants and native grasses, right? That's what we should require.
I think it's in there under special conditions, but I can't swear to that.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me right now, but that is a standard condition, I'm certain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Madam Chair, this is Clay
Yes.
Thomas.
Mr. Thomas?
These are always interesting situations that come before the board. Because I don't want to say the word damage is too strong of a word, but the actions have already been taken, and then it comes back to the board to say, will you now approve this? And we're faced
Right.
with a real tough situation as to, what do we do? What are our options? Whether there was an intent to do what you did or it was an innocent mistake, it's still before us saying, this is done and now what to do about it.
Right.
And I can tell you in the past, it has not sat well with the board up here having to address those issues. Because we're now put in a compromising position to either say, all right, what you did is okay, and go ahead, and that just opens the door for the next person to say, I can go ahead and do it and get away with it that way. Or we say, no, absolutely not, put it back to original, and that's not fair to you because your intent wasn't there to destroy the property, your intent was there to make it better. There's an old saying out there that I've always liked, and I think this applies to the applicant here, is you never gain experience until a moment after you need it. And there it is. In hearing everything that's taken place here, I do have some issues. I am concerned that grading occurred on someone else's property, obviously. Mistake or otherwise, you should know what your boundaries are. You should go out there and walk the property, get the stakes, and if you needed to, especially as much land as you were committed to improving, a survey or something else would have eliminated that. So I do have a problem that you went onto someone else's property, although you're attempting to rectify it now, you went onto someone else's property and actually graded. The photos don't do it justice. I take a little bit of a different position, up here, that when I went there, I looked at it more like a scorched earth approach, to be honest with you. I've hiked that Ballardini Ranch on numerous occasions. I love that whole area. And I saw what it was before, and I saw what you've done to it. But to stand out there and look at it now, it is vastly different. Everything is cleared. So it is what it is, but we have that situation. No permits for the horses facility there, on site. We need to rectify that. That should have been done again ahead of time. Roger Pelham addressed the issue. I think I'm glad he clarified it, that he is correct, code enforcement does not come out unless they've been called. So somebody took umbrage with what happened and brought it to Washoe County to address that. And rightfully so, they have every right to do that. That being said, now the question becomes, what do we do about it? We do have a couple options. We can go ahead and say, yes, what's done is done, and go ahead and keep moving forward. We can say, put the property back to original, which I don't think is the right answer either. but maybe a compromise here, and this would be with the acceptance of the applicant, of maybe what we do is we come to some sort of conclusion where if you're willing to plant a certain number of trees or return a certain portion to it to original, such as if we said, and I'm just making a number out here, if you'll plant 20 trees somewhere around that property, minimum of starting out at 6 feet high, and you do it within the next 2 years, that will revegetate some of the property there. Especially, I'm not telling you where to plant it, but if it was up by the road, it would block the view so people aren't looking at your horse pastures and things like that. So, you know, I mean, I'm willing to compromise here. I don't know what the answer, I don't have the answers, and I think the board ultimately will come up with something. But if I can take just a second and ask if the applicant is willing to do something like that, you know, willing to plant trees if we come up with a fair number to help mitigate what we're up against. Is that?
That's certainly, you're welcome to
Can
ask
we
that
have one of the
question.
applicants come up and see if they're willing to do something like that?
Chelsea Detmers for the record, and Mr. Thomas, absolutely, that is something we would be happy to look at, and had future plans to revegetate and add things, so we would be more than amenable.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think I've spoken my piece on this matter. I'd love to work with the board members up here to actually find out the best method to go forward with.
I agree, and I would like to, I don't know if this is exactly my place, but I'd like to hear more what Mr. Christensen thinks.
Thank you, Brad. I am looking, unfortunately, I have not done a physical, personal view of that area. Wish I had. But in taking the totality of the promises made by the applicants, and we appreciate that, the assurances that we have, I just don't like this. I think we ought to deny it. And then that leaves the applicant to develop a more detailed plan. It's not up to this board to tell you to plant trees or to do remediation and how to engineer your bridge and, you know, everything like that. What we're doing is approving what you've asked us to approve, and I'm not in favor of doing that. I think that we need to deny that and let them come back with a more detailed plan and really concentrate on not just the minimum standards of remediation, but give us some assurance that it's going to be finished. I have my grave doubts that the scope of this project is going to ever happen. I don't know how to say that except it's a judgment call, but we're not the final say. You can certainly appeal it, but I think it's at this point an unfinished plan.
Yeah, I agree. I can't really approve it without a landscape plan, you know, and now a remediation plan. So maybe we should continue it until they get that. Or can we continue it without denying it? And if the applicant is willing to continue it, otherwise we could deny it and then they can come back. Or I don't know, how does that work, Trevor, with denying it and then maybe they have separate.
Madam Chairman, if I may, Roger Pelley
Yeah.
with Washoe County Planning. So I heard a couple of three different options there. The first would be a continuance contingent upon the applicant bringing back a comprehensive landscape plan for the site. That is
Right.
possible based upon the approval of the applicant. They would technically have to request that. We are in a position where we don't have the luxury of simply continuing on our own because they have a time frame. We have a legal standard that we have to meet in terms of the time frame. They can request that. That's number one. Number 2 would be denial and expecting them to come back with another SUP. That can also be done. They would then be, again, under code enforcement, they would have to be going forward with a remediation plan through Washoe County Engineering, and there is a code provision that limits applying for the same special use permit more than once. The new special use permit would not be able to be submitted for at least 12 months.
Okay.
And did I miss one?
Yeah, you said 3.
I perhaps miscounted. Perhaps it's only 2.
That is
Okay.
true. However, if the board were to deny without prejudice,
Deny without prejudice.
they could bring it back at any time.
Yeah, if the board specifically says that they deny but without prejudice, that then eliminates that 12-month waiting period. Perhaps there was 3.
Right.
Madam Chair?
Okay, and then they can come back with a landscape plan and a better plan, so we know what the heck they're proposing to do, you know? Because at this point, we have no idea what they're proposing to do as far as any additional work. We know what they did, and that was bad, but what are they going to do in the future? And what's their plan for pasture, for revegetation, for stables, or whatever they are, an arena? You know, what does that look like?
If I may, Madam Chair, I actually think we do know what they plan to do in terms of the context of the current permit, because those contours that were shown on the grading plan are what is proposed to be done at this time. What is done right now is not what is shown on those plans. It's part of it, but the
Right.
plans show what they want to do in the end. So I think we do know what they want to do, at least in terms of the contour, perhaps not in terms of stabilization and landscape.
Right, but yeah, we need stabilization, landscaping improvements like stables, arenas, whatever. You know, is it outdoor riding arena, indoor riding arena? You know, what is it?
If I may, Madam Chair, perhaps the conversation might be more narrowly tailored, because we really want to maintain our focus, really a laser focus on the contour of the land, the grading, and perhaps its associated impacts. But I really wouldn't want to get too far afield. And I'm looking at council here for that.
Madam Chairman, let me interject. What's before you is an SUP for major grading. A remediation plan it can be a portion of that, as Mr. Pelham said. However, in regard to other plans regarding structures and whatnot on the property, that is not part of this SUP and will not be a part of a future SUP. So we need to keep, as Mr. Pelham said, we need to keep it focused on what is before this board. Whether you can make the findings pursuant to the SUP, pursuant to county code, or not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would add, and maybe Board Member Thomas was on the right track when he was looking at possible remediation steps or other alternatives. However, what you have, we do have a plan. We do know what they want to do. There is some conditions, some requirements for some pretty stringent reclamation and revegetation of the site. I would recommend that the board move forward today with a decision as listed out in your staff report. I believe you have the 3 options that Mr. Pelham prepared. I would certainly recommend that you look at those. If you feel that additional conditions are to be appropriate, then it's the purview of this board to go ahead and add those conditions as you see fit. But that is my recommendation, that you choose from one of the options available to you.
Madam Chairman.
Trevor, can I ask you a question? You know, the denial motion, can we say denial without prejudice? So they could submit an application sooner than 12 months?
You have that option as well, yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have a clarifying question, I think, for Trevor and
Okay, go ahead.
DDA Large. Does not knowing where the boundary or where the property line actually exists, doesn't that impact our decision about major grading? For an example, whose land we're grading?
Not sure I understand the question. We know where the property lines are. Are you saying you don't know exactly where the grading is in relation to the property line? Is that your question?
It was my understanding that a survey had not taken place and that we have, and I could be wrong here, and that'd be great, but that we have a discussion on the fence line as to whether or not, where the actual property is on a certain part of the grading. So my question is, until that's resolved and we say grade away, how does that work?
Madam Chair, if I may, Michael Large for the record, Deputy District Attorney. What I would say in regard to the major grading is you have an application before you on major grading on the property that these folks own. In regard to the grading that's gone on anyone else's property, that is a dispute between neighbors, and I would leave it with that. The county does not want to step in the middle of a dispute between neighbors in regard to grading on other people's property. I would note that Mr. Cassis has not been, or whoever's property that is, has not been cited by code enforcement in regard to grading that's been done on his property, only by the grading that's been done on their property. I would also want to, for the record, discourage this board from ever making a decision based on a non-belief that a plan will be followed through with. This board issues permits, and whether or not the findings can be made pursuant to county code. Whether or not you believe that they are financially in a position to complete this is not a condition of approval that this board can make.
Madam Chair, this is Rob. I have a statement, if I may.
Sure.
No disrespect to anybody on the board, but according to their special use permit application, it's pretty clear what they want to do in terms of they're going to use the personal, it's for horses, pasture, access to parcel. There is pasture grass and native sage as much as needed added on here. So they've answered the questions. And as far as that little spot where they graded on somebody else's property, it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there was a fence there. So they just moved a little bit of dirt. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but if you look at the permit, it's pretty clear on what they want to do. And so I would suggest that we focus on what the permit says and move forward on this. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Clay Thomas. I guess I see things a little bit different in regards that we're not here to discuss their permit of what they want to do. We are here to discuss basically a major grading event that occurred and how we address that. I think they have good intentions with what they want to do, but I think that's where our focus needs to be and how we address that or how we clarify that. So Madam Chair, I mean, it's up to you, but I guess before us, we kind of have a couple options. We have one is if we want to dissect this into segments, maybe we can look at, do we want to approve, let's just say, the new driveway? Or do we not want to approve the driveway and use the existing driveway? And the third one is, or do we want to deny the whole project and make them put it back to original, but kind of eat the elephant one bite at a time maybe, because there's several things that we're faced with here. It's your call how you might want to handle it. Thank you.
Well, I would like to go ahead and make a motion.
Right. And Madam
If
Chair,
anybody,
if I can break in really quickly and piggybacking on a bit with what the legal counsel, Mike Large, just said, what I recommend the board do is take a look at the plans as proposed and separate out the fact that there has been grading that has already taken place. Are these plans appropriate on their face? I suggest that we look at the plans and make that determination. Based on the proposal in front of you, based on the site plan, the grading that is being proposed, is that appropriate, regardless of whether or not there has been past grading, illegal or otherwise?
This is Rob for the record. I have reviewed it, and I personally believe that it's appropriate.
okay, well, agree with you. I think it is appropriate, and I think, unfortunately it was done without a permit, but what are you gonna do? And I don't know. I think Mr. Christensen is thinking about denial. I would say denial without prejudice, if that's what we're gonna do, because give them the opportunity to come in with a more detailed grading plan. Mr. Stanley?
Madam Chair, may we ask at this point in internal discussion, Mr. Pelham's explanation, or again, his advice or his description of the difference between having the new access road, or the new bridge, the new access road, and not, and what the outcome is on that. In other words, there's a no, yes, and middle road. What is that middle road? Pardon the terrible pun again, please.
Again, Roger Pelham for the record. The construction of the new driveway from Lone Tree Lane requires the construction of 2 retaining walls and a certain amount of grading, and then a little bridge. Then that's what would allow access to the remainder, to the back, if you will, portion of that property. Access to the back portion of the property already exists. It has been graded there. We've seen that. That's in the northwest corner of the property. Approval with the road requires, actually now I forget off the top of my head, a certain number of cubic yards worth of grading. If you eliminate that roadway, that driveway, that will reduce the total amount of grading by the amount required to construct the driveway. Generally speaking, less grading will generally have less impact.
And if I may, could they come back later then and reapply for that bridge?
Oh, certainly. This is simply the permit as it would be established today. Later on, the world is their oyster in terms of coming back later on for some other permit to do some other thing in conformance with the codes as they may exist at some point in the future. Absolutely.
Thank you. And since people were telling kind of where they were in terms of their thinking process, Madam Chair, the middle road sounds to me like it's an appropriate solution.
Without a new driveway.
Without the driveway, that's correct. And then later is later in terms of any other permitted activities.
I could go for that.
This is
Does
Rob.
everybody else?
Well, this is Rob.
Rob.
It was mentioned that to get in and out with a horse trailer, and that's kind of the idea of this property, it's kind of hard with their existing driveway. So I would like to see the access driveway approved in this,
And for what it's worth,
just because it's a safety issue.
and Brad Stanley, it sounds like you've seen the property too, Rob.
I have, yes.
And so you see that dog leg in the driveway.
Yep.
And that certainly prevents very large trailers from coming in. But as the applicant mentioned, they've been able to thread their existing trailers on that, so, yeah,
But barely.
yeah. And it with some difficulty, yeah.
Yeah, they've done it, so it's not impossible. Okay, I'm for that one.
Madam Chair, this is Clay Thomas.
Yeah.
I would not be opposed to a motion for approval without the new driveway. I think there's been a lot of grading that's already gone on. I think a new driveway can be something that can be addressed somewhere down the road in the future, after, no pun intended, but the dust settles. But I would also recommend within the motion, if we go that way, that we do take into account as part of the conditions, the letter on behalf of Frost Ranch Association.
Right, I already have that, including the condition requested by the Frost Ranch Association. Yeah.
Okay, and I would also recommend, and the applicant seemed to be supportive of at least identifying maybe the number of trees also to, in an attempt to revegetate some of the property and bring it back to its original form.
Were you referring to the 20 trees by the road? Is that what you were mentioning? Okay.
Yeah, I would accept, I would accept 20 trees that can be maybe put up against the road, kind of to block the view looking down and give, not only that, but give them a little bit of privacy also with on their own property from that road.
Okay.
They did state that a lot of people walk that road, look at their property and things like that, so I think I would assume that's a win-win for everybody.
Sure.
So,
Mr. Lloyd, if I may ask, if we approve this without the driveway, I just want to make sure, they can come back later and ask for the driveway?
Yes, if you are approving this SUP request, yes. they
Right,
can
but
come
if
back
we approve it
anytime.
without the driveway, can they come back later and ask for the driveway?
Yes, that does not constitute a denial according to, I'm looking at
No,
Mr. Large. Right.
they could bring it back with the driveway.
Right.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
Go ahead.
Well, it's a very complicated motion, so Clay?
No, I can do it.
all right, Madam Chair, I would be more than happy to default to you.
Okay, I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and the information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustments approve with conditions special use permit case number WSUP 210028 for Jordan and Chelsea Detmers for the conditions and including the condition requested by the Frost Ranch Association included as Exhibit A, the conditions included as Exhibit A to this matter, including Condition 1B, which prohibits construction of a new driveway, having made all 5 findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.810.30, including consistency, improvements, site suitability, and issuance not detrimental, as well as effect on a military installation.
Now, did that include the 20 trees?
Yeah.
And including the provision of adding a minimum of 20 trees.
Madam Chair, I would probably say a minimum of addition of 20 trees, minimum height to start 6 feet, and to be planted within maybe a 2-year period of time, if that would work.
Okay.
Well, I think
So
you need
no-
to, I think you need to identify a time frame, and, when you say planting trees, you can go ahead and go get a little twig like that, and you're in compliance. So, I mean, at
Right,
the minimum,
right.
we ought to set a height too, so.
Okay, as noted from Mr.
Hold on, Madam Chair,
Clay,
was
comments?
staff able to get that condition?
I do believe I have that condition.
Okay.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Okay,
Madam Chair, if I may read the
Yes.
appeal language. All right. Most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you are aggrieved and disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee.
thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Now, the next item on the agenda is special use permit case WSUP 210030, Tumwa Pump House. And Katie, are you up?
Roger, thank you for taking this long day.
Certainly. I am, again, Roger Pelham with Washoe County Planning. I am more than pleased to step in for my colleague as she's just a touch under the weather this afternoon.
Okay.
So, special use permit case, oh, can I start? Are we?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, I'm switching mental gears, I need to focus here. All right. This special use permit, WSUP 21-0030, is a request by Truckee Meadows Water Authority, and they're going to, proposing to make a number of improvements at an existing well site, including adding a pump house. That is a utilities services use type, which requires approval of a special use permit. They're also asking to vary standards, grading standards to allow a permanent earthen structure greater than 6 feet in height, and to modify the landscape standards and waive the parking standards, that is to say pavement, required for the on-site circulation. There is proposed to be pavement around the pump house itself, but not around the perimeter of, or I should say, the remainder of the site. We also require a solid wall or fence around utilities, actually any civic or commercial use type where it's adjacent to residential, and they are asking to waive that as well. Utility services use type, again, are allowed in the low-density suburban zone where this is located, subject to the approval of a special use permit. Proposed grading, greater than 6 feet in height of permanent earthen structure, is for a retention pond there on the site. And Article 810, special use permits, does allow the varying of standards with the approval of a special use permit. Here we have the vicinity map. We can see that here it is sort of north of Arrow Creek, south of Zalesi, down in the southwest Truckee Meadows area, and it's about a 2.4 acre site. This is the proposed site plan. We see the retention or infiltration basin here to the left, that is to say the west side, then the proposed well house to the right there. The existing tank will be removed and, or as I should say, proposed. This is abutting LDS, of course, so typically those mitigation measures would be required. As we can see, it's not real close to the adjacent residents, but they would still apply, and therefore they're asking to have that portion waived. This has previously been a well site. It is going to continue with a very similar use. It is currently in operation, and the site is proposed to be improved as shown. Grading of little under an acre is proposed. Again, that's just under the amount that in and of itself would have triggered a special use permit. We can roll those grading in with this special use permit as well. And again, greater than 6 feet in height for the infiltration basin. I will actually let the applicant talk about the use of the site itself. They are asking to, again, waive those asphalt standards around the edge, but not directly adjacent to the pump house itself. And the reason that they're asking for that waiver is it's a relatively low intensity use. It's very relatively infrequent that folks actually show up to that pump house. Again, we do allow this. These are the typical standards, and well, we're going to see in just a moment what they are proposing to do. These are a couple of photos of the subject site. And here's what they're proposing to do. We've got some landscaping really clustered around the facility itself and between that structure and the adjacent dwelling. And this is intended to really be minimal, to blend in, but also to provide screening. And again, on the other sides, it's essentially open space. It's undeveloped area. We do have conditions of approval from engineering and from Washoe Story Conservation. And that'll deal with in terms of what types of seeds are used for that revegetation. We can make all of the findings. It is in conformance with the Southwest Truckee Meadows Area Plan. It was sent to all of the relevant agencies. We received no recommendations for denial. This was sent to 39 individual parcels, again, resulting in 30 or more individual property owners, shown on the map there. Staff has come to the conclusion that the required findings can be made for the special use permit, including the one additional finding necessary that the community character will be preserved. And again, that's what we're doing with the landscaping there with that modification and mitigation. And with that, we are recommending approval, subject to the conditions as listed in the staff report, the additional finding for the Southwest Truckee Meadows Area Plan, and I'm available for any questions that you may have. Madam Chair,
if
I
you
believe
could please
you're muted.
unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, is the applicant available?
Yes.
We have Ben Jesh making a presentation in person.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Ben Jesh. I'm a senior engineer with Truckee Meadows Water Authority. I'd also like to introduce the team with me. I have Barb Santner, and she is a landscape architect with Stantec, as well as Cynthia Albright is a planning consultant we've hired to assist us with this process. I also have Liz Pearson here in attendance. She's our design engineer and available for questions if need be. Thank you, Roger, for the presentation, and I'll just hope to augment some of the pieces that we'd like to highlight as part of Truckee Meadows Water Authority.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. Roger already talked about the location, so I don't need to dwell too much on this, other than to highlight again that this is a relatively low density, sparsely developed area dominated by primarily native vegetation surrounding it. Most of the neighbors are hundreds, if not thousands of feet away, with the exception, of course, of that closest neighbor to the east. We communicated with, and I'll get to that a little bit more shortly. Roger touched on this also, which I appreciate because a lot of what we're doing is a replacement or repair or rehabilitation project of old infrastructure. If this were new infrastructure, we might have a different approach to this, but given the existing circumstances, we have to deal with what we've got. This was originally built in 1979. The well was constructed. And just as a note of curiosity, the tank that's on site that's now 16 feet tall was originally a 52-foot tall tank, 3 times what it is. So I'm sure that stood out prominently in the neighborhood at the time. And a point of note, the original well that's still there and being used is a pretty small diameter agricultural style well, which necessitates a certain type of pump that is prone to failure and maintenance requirements. Again, this it was originally a private water company. It was inherited by Washoe County DWR, who subsequently made some additional improvements to the site in '96. That's when the tank was shortened to 16 feet, which then became part of TUMWA in the 2015 merger. And TUMWA subsequently drilled a new well on the parcel in 2019, which I will come back to in a minute. As noted, we will be demolishing the existing well house, that tank in its entirety, as well as an underground pump station to simplify facilities on the site. We will be converting the existing production well to a monitoring well that will continue to monitor for the aquifer levels in the area. And as pointed out, we'll be constructing a new 1,350 square foot well house enclosing this new production well and the appurtenances associated with it. Also be constructing that elevated infiltration basin to receive the pump to waste, and I'll come back to that in a few minutes also. And as noted, the approximately 5,900 square feet of pavement directly around the well house that will receive the most traffic. And then limiting, other asphalt or minimizing asphalt in other areas to reduce impervious area, reduce runoff, and minimize the urban heat effect. So this is the area that receives benefit from this well. It's a pretty large area, about 4.3 square miles. It's served by 4 of those additional wells you see that are all of similar age and style of wells. So, it's an aging and limited resource. Water is an aging and limited resource in this area. So this new well is meant to augment and provide a robust supply for this area. So again, this serves to supply daily water to the site or to the benefit area I was just showing, as well as providing fire protection. These wells typically run in the summertime only to augment fire flows and supply during the high demand months. And as you can see here on the slide, this well more than doubles the supply of the existing well that's in that place. Oops, sorry. As I alluded to earlier, this new well is a modern, larger diameter well. It is more plumb and more vertical construction, allows us to use a vertical turbine pump, which is far more reliable, efficient, less prone to mechanical maintenance and failure than the other pumps that's replacing. So that's really one of the significant drivers of this project. And overall, one more feature of the new well is that it has a dedicated recharge line that allows for off-season recharge of the aquifer. Tumwell will be eventually recharging off-season water back into the aquifer to bring aquifer levels back up, and it's all part of a regional plan to improve the sustainability and health of the aquifer in this area. A couple photos here just to show you what's there. You can see that tank that will be demolished entirely, and then the old structure, the old well house structure there on the right will also go away and be left with a flush with ground monitoring well. There will be essentially nothing there. On the left, you can see the new well has already been drilled there in the foreground. That's the casing of the well, and the new well building will be constructed around that. Duplicating a photo that Roger had in his presentation also, but you can see that the photo on the left there is looking from the adjacent neighbor's property on the east there. You can also already see that there's a significant boulder pile that was placed, presumably during a prior phase of the project as screening, but it provides a significant screening barrier already to this parcel from that immediate neighbor. On the photo on the right, you can kind of see where we are looking, and if I can get this just for context, the photo on the left was taken standing right about there, looking westward. That house on the right, that is a garage that is facing the property, so mitigates a little bit of the visibility already from that adjacent neighbor. But we wanted to be good neighbors. We went out and made contact with they are a new owner of the house, but met with them on site and really came up with a landscaping plan and talking with those neighbors that better screens and adapts from the landscaping to meet their needs and visibility from their property, and in the end gains their support on the project. Duplicating again here, so I won't spend too much time. The infiltration basin on the west, the well house in the center. And part of the reason, again, that we're requiring this gravel loop road is to maintain access to infrequently used existing facilities. Again, we will convert that existing well on the northeast corner to a monitoring well. And there is also and I neglected a call out for it, but there is a existing reg station in that southwest corner near those two stars that requires to maintain access to that location. Thank you. So that's sort of the reason for the maintained gravel loop road. Otherwise, we would have looked to restore the whole area, but we need to maintain that access. Overall, this is a 2.5 acre site, and our new building really is only a 1,300 square foot, so relatively light footprint of building on an otherwise large parcel. Here's a quick look at what the proposed well house will look like. It's a modern stucco facade building consistent with the surrounding architecture. It will be a neutral color blending in with the surroundings, approximately what's shown here. I want to point out that there was minimal lighting on the sites, only overhead of the doors facing downward and consistent with code and dark sky requirements. The height of this building is governed by equipment internal that will be required ultimately for that recharge equipment that I was referring to earlier. And then briefly to touch back on that infiltration basin that is required for when the wells start up and shut down, they're required to run for a few minutes at a time to make sure that the water being pumped into the system is clean and clear. So the wastewater is being pumped to this basin to infiltrate. The cycle is expected to only put about 2.5 inches of water into that basin at any given time. And as you can see, 5 hours to infiltrate that water. So we wouldn't ever expect there to be any real significant water accumulation in that basin under normal operation. And that would be 1 or 2 cycles today. Also, as I mentioned, these wells often or primarily operate in the summertime. Therefore, a lot of this water will probably evaporate as well as infiltrate. So little impact to the groundwater table or any of the surrounding area from the infiltration of that water. In the rare occasion that this well needs to be run to waste for longer, the basin is sized to be bigger than that for those needs. That's very infrequent. And then in the even more infrequent case that it were to overflow, there is a designed overflow planned to an adjacent ditch that flows to a secondary containment basin at an adjacent site, a couple thousand feet, I think it is, to the north. And with that, we'd like to go on to some of those landscaping and screening plans, and I'd like to turn it over to Barb Santner with Stantec, our landscape architect.
Great. Thank you. For the record, my name is Barb Santner. I'm a senior landscape architect with Stantec here in Reno, and would like to go through some of the landscaping and screening and visual aspects of the project as been noted. So up on the screen right now is the landscape plan that we're proposing, and what you will notice is that we've purposely placed the landscape kind of grouping it around the building to screen it from off-site, and especially from the closest neighbor, who is located approximately here. As was previously discussed by Ben, and a photo was shown about this property, there's a tall rock berm along this entire edge, and this neighbor, which is very close, it's about 65 feet away, but that's the closest neighbor by far. The only portion of the property they can really see is kind of the corner here. So Tumwa, Ben, and our planner Cynthia Albright went out and met with the property owner, and they looked at and discussed what can be seen on the property from their house. And that's why some of this landscaping is clustered at the corner here, to help buffer their view from really the small part of the property they can actually see. The landscape style is based kind of on what you would see in the surrounding residential landscaping, in that it's comprised of evergreen trees and some deciduous trees and some colorful shrubs, so that it actually kind of blends in with the same type of landscaping that's on the surrounding property. Additionally, the remainder of the site would actually have revegetation, well, first of all, there would be some existing slopes that do not need to be preserved, and those would be noted to be preserved with the construction. And there's a portion here as well as some areas around here. There are some areas of the site that were previously disturbed, and then any new disturbance would also be revegetated with the native sagebrush community type of vegetation. So that would be sagebrush, rabbit brush, native grasses, and some flowering plants. And that would restore all those slopes, because that's really what you see on all the surrounding properties is really the native sagebrush landscape. So the next slide shows, okay, oops, I went backwards, I guess. Okay. All right, I've got my directions squared away here. Okay, anyway, the next slide shows just some examples, photographs or reference imagery of what this landscaping looks like. We've got some colorful trees like mountain ash and Canada red cherry. This is a golden rain tree, as well as native juniper and pine trees. And then some of the shrubs are many that we actually I really like to use here that have some color, but they're already also very drought resistant, like New Mexico privet, Russian sage, this native sand cherry, mountain mahogany, and then this is a fern bush. And again, the idea of using this particular type of plant material is that, you know, we want the landscaping to look very similar to what the native or what the landscaping looks like on the surrounding properties. So the next two slides show what you would see on the site from Welcome Way. So Welcome Way is the public street to the north of this site, and it's actually about 800 feet from the project site. So right now I took this photo standing on the curb at Welcome Way, just looking directly south. And this particular slide shows the existing conditions. So you can barely make out where these two arrows are. You can see that the existing well house and the existing tank, both of which will be removed, as Ben mentioned earlier. And then this is one of the homes that you can see adjacent to the site. But you can see that, you know, most of this is just the native sagebrush landscape that you can see. And there are some, you know, clusters of evergreen trees and other plant material. But really the way that most of these properties have been landscaped is the landscaping is kind of loosely clustered around the buildings and not really spread out really far into the parcels. The next slide here is a photo simulation of what you would see after this facility is constructed. So again, mentioning that the existing well house that you saw in the previous photo, as well as the existing tank, would both be removed. And then this is a simulation of the new well house. It's as shown in the previous photo drawings. It would be tan, stucco, with a slightly darker brown roof. And you can see that it's, you know, very similar in tone to kind of the other buildings in this area, so it would blend in very nicely. And then the proposed landscaping, this again would be what you would see kind of on the north side of the building, but it would softly buffer the view of the building from the roadway. Another important aspect is that this landscaping is shown at about 5 years maturity. And so, of course, it's only going to get bigger from here, but this is shown about 5 years at maturity. And then that's my presentation. And then now Cynthia Albright, the project planner, would talk about some of the modifications that are proposed. Use this one to advance.
Good afternoon. I know it's been a long day for you all. Cynthia Albright, for the record, planner, my own firm working with Tumwa. Let me change this. There we go. So I just wanted to say that really quickly, What we've done is we've taken this project and we've tried to do everything we can to make it fit into the neighborhood in compliance with the Southwest Area Plan number 14, which is to really recognize and preserve the context of the community. So that's why the landscaping plan was modified a little bit. That's why Ben and I went out and talked to the neighbors, and we talked to the wife of the husband, Chris, who wrote the letter in support, to say, what kind of landscaping would you like to see from your backyard? Because that's where they can see it. Their actual home itself is buffered from the garage, so when they're in their backyard is when they'll have an opportunity to see just a slice of this lot, of this parcel. And so the idea was to find out what kinds of landscaping she would like to look at. And so all of that was changed to accommodate that. And you can see from this exact photograph here, this is a different well house up in the Arrow Creek property, where when you plant the trees all the way around it, like code requires, all of a sudden it starts to stick out. You notice it. And so the idea is that we would integrate this landscaping in a way that was far more context sensitive to the surrounding area, which is predominantly all sagebrush. We think that by keeping it loosely developed around the property site, as you can see, that it sort of falls away from your eye as opposed to focusing on it like it does when it's completely surrounding the perimeter. When it comes to the paved parking modification, I took this photograph up in Arrow Creek too, because you can see that when you have to pave the entire site, it ends up creating more impervious surface that's unnecessary, which this might be warranted in this location because they have a lot of property to maintain there. But in this particular location, we only have 2 trucks a week that come by, and only in the case of a maintenance situation. So it doesn't make sense to require that much paving on the property, but only around the actual perimeter of the building. Then, of course, the fencing modification. I took this picture because if you look really carefully, if I can work this thing, somehow, you can see there's the fence of the property. But that's the beauty of it, is that you can't see it. And so rather than require or install a perimeter solid block wall, which nobody in the area has, they all have open view fencing for the simple reason that they want to look out on the landscaping. We're proposing to just focus the landscaping and maintain the perimeter fence as a chain link fence. With that, I will say that, first of all, it's been a real pleasure to work with staff, always. They've been very accommodating, very amenable, easy to work with. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. If you need to ask any questions, we're all here to do so.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Is there any public comment?
I have no public comment in chambers.
And there are no hands raised via Zoom.
Okay, no public comment. Do we have any questions from the board for the applicant or the staff? Brad Stanley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I wanted to say great package. Thank you very much. Landscape design, that's an excellent idea, of course, and I'm going to have some questions about that. But one of the questions I have is there any, and I appreciate it too, the fact that you measured roughly the dark sky compliance in lumens, so we got right down to it. Is there any sound? Is there a sound issue at all? What are you creating any noise? The pumps make any noise, or are they silent?
Liz Pearson, Brown and Caldwell. Yes, when the pump runs, there is a motor above grade, but it will be housed in a CMU block building that also has additional insulation on the outside that looks like stucco. So no, there should not be a sound issue. I don't think you would be able to hear it from the adjoining property when the pump is running.
Thank you. And a question that I also had was, has there been any recent construction there? I thought I heard something about a kind of a tall piece of white equipment up there not too long ago.
I think, was it early 2000s? Oh, yes, there is adjacent construction on this I believe it's the school property nearby, but not on
No,
our
I
side.
know where the school is, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
no, I was talking about actually, not at the pump as far as you know.
Ben Jesh with Tumwa again for the record. What you could possibly considering was the drilling of that new well was a couple years ago, and I know we put up big sound. I think that was in 2019. We placed large sound walls because the drill equipment was
Made some noise.
particularly noisy at that time. So it was likely the large sound walls that were placed at the time.
So not recent then? Yeah. Okay, good. And as landscaping, a question, thank you. There seem to be two, and you may have explained this, and if so, forgive me for missing it. There seem to be two landscaping designs, one in black and white and a nice one in color too. Those are different, right?
Nope, they're the same. The landscape plan in the packet should be the same as the color version. As far as I know.
It looks different to my eye. And, you know, the area where the boulders were, it looks like the trees, maybe the boulders
Okay.
took the place of the trees that were in the black and white, but because they're not
I guess I'm
particularly
not
the color.
seeing the version that there was an earlier version where we did have trees along the inside of the property here.
Here's the one I'm looking at.
What page of your staff report, Commissioner Stanley? Board Member Stanley?
What page?
What page? I can pull it up.
That would be lovely. I can't find a page number of it. It's identified L12 in one of the corners. It doesn't have a page number on it otherwise that I could find.
Okay, give me just one moment. I'll see if I can get that up for you.
Yeah, I think we can, once she can pull that up, I can just double check, but this is the plan here, the latest plan. And as I was mentioning earlier, we focused the landscaping kind of on the northeast corner because that's
the
the
nearest
one
house.
corner that closest property owner can see a bit of, and
Right.
then around the south side of the building. There was an earlier version of the plan where we had some trees within the property, kind of along the east property line, but ultimately that didn't really make sense because they have a really tall berm on their whole property anyway.
Right. And where I'm going with this is that request is a condition for less landscaping, you know, so you don't have to do the perimeter. And I understand that you've centralized it in my opinion, very efficient ways. But I have a concern, I'll just tell you right now, and that is on the street side, or what will at some point be a street. Right now, I think it's still a gravel road that goes down to Welcome Way and goes up to Sage. So I'm concerned about the, what would it be, west to east view?
Okay.
Which is unprotected here. And I'm wanted to bring up the notion of several, and it wouldn't be many, trees to protect that view. And it would also, not only from the roadway, but from Sage Hill School, Sage School. So it's on the westerly side.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that we could either relocate some of the trees and put them kind of, I see there's just one little stretch kind of on the northwest side of the building
Yeah.
that you're probably talking about. And
Yeah.
if there were a road constructed on what's now gravel,
Right.
is that what you're referring to?
It is, and
Yeah.
also just, you know, under the concept of planning, as we all know, just because there's not a house on a piece of acreage right now, doesn't mean anything 10 seconds from now. So, you know,
Yeah, we
it's just
could
providing.
definitely relocate some of the trees to that side, or,
Actually, if you find L12,
L12?
that was the designator on the graphic, and again, it's in the package.
Is it part of the marking last year?
I suppose I could just run down and hand it to you. Could I?
okay.
Say it again.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's this one.
It opens up to like the attachments. Right, perfect.
It's Exhibit E, and then
We're making it work.
And then designated L12, but which page it is, I have no.
I think I got it.
Okay, so this is a really old version of the plan that was replaced ultimately.
Is it okay if I really like it?
Yeah, and so the colored version is the plan.
I
Yeah,
understood
but I
that.
still see kind of what you're saying, I believe. If you put the colored plan back up.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, this one is kind of obsolete, actually. This is the plan that we're
Right.
proposing. But are you kind of indicating maybe a few trees
And-
here is what I'm hearing?
I'm not going to suggest exactly where the tree should go, but it's the view from the roadway on the left, which
On the
would be
left.
to the
So,
east.
yeah, so
And
I
so
believe- yeah.
there's that area there when you said just add a couple, it looks like maybe 3 trees, but that's just my guess.
Like maybe put, yeah, I mean, we could
Yes,
do
ma'am.
definitely,
Right in there.
I feel like we
Right
could
in
do
there.
that. Yeah.
And you still get your reduction, but anybody who said, why didn't we
Something on that
screen for
side.
future? That would be the answer.
Sure, that would work, because it wouldn't take much, probably, we
Okay.
can
Thank you very
have a
much.
few of the bigger ones just right here, absolutely, in my opinion, anyway.
Do you want to put that into your condition, Brad?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so I guess yes, Mr. Bellum?
Thank you very much. I just have a point of clarification. Is that relocating 3 trees to the east side or 3 additional trees?
Roger, my preference would be 3 additional, because their existing plan is beautiful. And the double buffering there is well thought through with the meeting with the neighbor. And this is just a couple of additional trees for the future neighbors up the hill.
Thank you. Just so that's clear, when I write the condition tomorrow
Plus 3
morning.
plus trees, yes.
Okay, any other questions or comments for staff or the applicant?
Yeah, this is Rob. I got one. You showed a beautiful slide of some native plants. Is it in our packet? I'm having a hard time finding it. Okay.
Very educational too, I might add.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, so let's, no public comment, right? So we're gonna bring it back to the board.
Just to verify, there is no public comment.
Oh,
Just because you didn't ask for it, but no, there's no public comment.
right, okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so we'll bring it back to the board. I mean, these projects are kind of needed in the community, right? And they had a beautiful presentation, beautiful landscape plan, not, taking in consideration the neighbors, well thought out, necessary for the community. What can we say? Except add 3 more trees. Right? What do you guys think?
For the record, Brad Stanley, I think you got it. It is much needed, well done, ready to go with 3 trees.
Okay, do you want to make a motion or does anybody have any more comments?
I'll need some guidance here, but here we go.
Okay,
I move that after given reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approve with conditions special use permit case number WSUP 21-0030 for Truckee Meadows Water Authority with the conditions included as Exhibit A and the addition of a minimum of 3 additional trees in the location discussed.
having made all 5 findings,
Yes, ma'am. Having made all 5 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Section 110.810.30, which includes consistency improvements, site suitability, issuance not detrimental, and effects on a military installation.
okay, do we have a second?
1 second, Madam Chair. I think maybe it's a point of clarification here from Mr. Pelham.
Yes, Madam Chair. Would the maker of the motion also include the Southwest Truckee Meadows Area Plan finding SW.2.14? That the
I'm sorry.
community character as described in the character management statement can
yes,
be
okay.
adequately conserved through mitigation of any identified potential negative impacts.
All right. And so, having made all findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code Section 110810.30 and the finding associated with the Southeast Truckee Meadows Area Plan.
Finding SW 2.14.
Yes.
I'll second that, Madam Chair. This is Clay Thomas.
Great, thank you, Mr. Thomas. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Great project, thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, that's thank you.
Okay, planning items is the next item on the agenda. And I think Trevor Lloyd is going to tell us about the neighborhood meeting process.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we're excited to roll out our new process for pre-application and neighborhood meetings. As I'm sure you're all aware, the CABs, they still exist, but they do not review development projects sent by planning. And so we plan to formally launch this new process in April, coming up. So for the next application cycle, this goes into effect. Sorry, thank you for getting that up. Can you go to the next slide? So in order to make this a functional process, planning has created a new website that will provide the public with a list of upcoming development projects, as well as the details for each of those projects that will include information on upcoming neighborhood meetings. What you're seeing here, this is basically the landing site for Washoe, for the planning page. And you'll notice on the left-hand side, there's a tab that says Neighborhood Meetings. You'd go ahead and click that tab. Next slide, please. And it comes to this Neighborhood Meeting Hub site. This site will act as the hub for community engagement with the stated intent of integrating community feedback in the development review process. Go ahead and hit the next slide. The web page is very interactive. It includes a map for projects that allows the public to click on each of the projects and gather detailed information. Also, I mentioned previously, it will provide the details on upcoming neighborhood meetings and give the public an opportunity to comment as well. So it's kind of a central repository for all of the information for upcoming development. Let's see, what makes this process so different, and we consider it a radical change from what we've been doing. The primary thing is we're trying to gather as much information from the public and get them involved prior to submittal, so early on. And the intent is that when the developers, when the applicants get that feedback from the public, the hope is that they will incorporate those changes into the design of their applications. If you haven't done so already, I would invite each of you to go to the website, take a look at that website, play around with its functions, and maybe save it on your desktop so that you see what's coming in the future, because a lot of this is going to come right to the board after it goes to these meetings. So I just briefly want to walk you through the steps for the development, the new development review process. The first step is for the applicants to schedule either a pre-application meeting or a pre-development meeting. There is a distinction. The pre-application meeting is very informal. It's basically with a planner or a couple planners. May include someone from another reviewing agency, but primarily it's to discuss the project. It's probably a smaller scale project, and the process itself, what they'll need. We'll set up meeting times, meeting dates. We'll plan to prepare a mailing list. However, it will be the applicant's responsibility to send out that mailing list. That differs from the pre-development meeting process. We've been having pre-development meetings now for quite some time, and those are essentially for the larger projects that involve review and comment from a lot of agencies. So we schedule those twice a month. We invite folks from health and fire engineering. Sometimes outside agencies like RTC and NDOT will also show up, but it's a great opportunity just to discuss a project long before an application is submitted. So next slide, please. All right, the second step is for the applicant to host the neighborhood meeting. And we ask the applicant, we do mirror essentially the noticing requirements for these public hearings. That's 750 feet, reaching a minimum of 30 of the closest neighbors. And then we ask the applicants to hold the meeting 10 days prior to submittal of the application in a location that's within close proximity, ideally, to the proposed project. Next slide, please. And finally is the third step, which is the application submittal itself. And we had recently, within the last year or so, changed the date from the 15th of the month to the 8th of the month to give the reviewing agencies more time to review. And that also seems to work well with this new process that we're creating. So that, in a nutshell, is our new process for public engagement. Again, we haven't rolled it out yet. I'm sure there's going to be tweaks along the way. We'll probably get a little bit of pushback from the developers initially, at least, in terms of requiring the neighborhood meeting prior to application submittal. But the hope is that it will help smooth out the process and maybe help even vet some of the projects before they're submitted and get to you all. So that's the new process. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Yeah, Lloyd, I'm sorry. Yeah, Ms. Lloyd, I do have one quick question. Is that for any SUP that might come down a path?
No, not necessarily. And in fact, the pre-application meeting is a time to vet many of these projects. Not every application that comes forward will require a neighborhood meeting, but those that do have somewhat of an impact on the neighbors, on the community, yes, those would go to a neighborhood meeting.
So if there's a setback issue from one house?
Probably not. If it
Okay.
doesn't involve the whole community, like a setback, no, we wouldn't anticipate.
And can we get a copy of that slide presentation sent to us?
Sure, absolutely. I'll send that to you right after this meeting.
Because I think we could also, from there, put it out to our neighborhood community boards or whatever that are out there. We've got.
Oh, yeah.
Each development has, or
Yeah.
area has their, or what is it, neighborhood?
Citizens Advisory Board.
The next door thing where it blasts out to everybody. So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I want to give some major kudos to this young lady over here, Lacey. Lacey has been amazing in she has been so instrumental in helping to set up the website and then provide the instructions and helping out staff along the way. And we need a lot of help. But so thank you so much, Lacey. Yeah.
I have a question, Trevor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Does it cost money? This pre-application meeting, is there a filing fee or?
No, that there is no fee. The only fee comes with the application submittal itself.
Okay, so the meeting itself doesn't cost, there's no pre-application meeting fee?
There is no fee. It's hosted by the applicant. We've really put the onus now on the applicant to provide a location, set out the notices, even record the meeting, get all of that included on the website. We give them the permissions. They can come into that web page and then add all the documents in the applications. So we do put a lot of onus on them. Again, there's going to, especially initially, there's going to be a lot of hand-holding. We're going to work very closely with the applicants to make sure they're meeting all of these requirements. And anytime you roll something like this out, there's bound to be certain things that we find along the way that we may need to improve upon. But at least it's a start. And my hope is that we really, with this process, we can really engage the public in a much more effective way.
Great. I wish we would have had this for the Boulder Bay project that we heard last month that I didn't hear, but you guys did. Anyway, I think it sounds good. And if hopefully the developers will consider public comment,
because I know that they did this for the 750 condos being proposed in downtown Incline Village. They had a meeting at the chateau, and public came and they noticed it and everything, and there was so much positive feedback they got that it was really a positive thing. But
Right.
anyway, great. Any questions for Trevor? Okay, well, let's go on to the next meeting. Chair and board items, future agenda items. Anything? No?
This is
Okay.
Rob. I have a question about a past board item. Would that fit into here, or is that for a different time?
No, that's for the number 11A.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so we'll get back to you on that. Request for information from staff? No, right? Director and legal counsel items. Okay, report on previous Board of Adjustment items. Rob?
According to the minutes last month, there was one item that was pulled, and it was supposed to be scheduled for this month. What happened on that?
It was determined after that meeting that the applicants requested one additional month. And so you'll likely hear that in April. And so we'll have to also renotice because we did continue at time certain. So we'll renotice. It'll come back to the board. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have no other items to report on at this time.
Okay. Request for information from staff, director and legal counsel items. Mr. Large?
Nothing from legal.
Okay. Public comment, Madam Secretary?
We have no public comment.
Okay.
Madam Chair? This
Yeah.
is Clay Thomas. May I just step in for just a moment, please?
Sure.
I just would like to take a minute. I've noticed that Donna Fagan is no longer with us, and I just want to take a minute to say that she will be missed. I was very appreciative to have her here. She helped out in a lot of ways. If I had questions, I could call, and she always ran.
Oh, I had her on speed dial. Yeah.
I always had her, it was a pleasure working with her. And if
Yes,
we can
it
just pass that on, I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of the board, but hopefully I do.
Yes.
That it was a
I second
pleasure
that
having
motion.
her, and we will miss her and wish her luck in finance. And I know she's replaced with two outstanding people that are going to do a great job also. So looking forward to working with you two ladies also.
Okay, great. I also have a comment that I severely broke my left arm in a skiing accident. And I've had 2 surgeries. I have 13 pins and a plate in my arm. So I've been going through a lot of trauma this last month. It was right after our last board meeting. And so I had to use Zoom. Thank God I could do that. Unfortunately, I couldn't see a lot of what was going on, but I just wanted to let you know that's why I'm Zooming. I can't drive because my hand, I can't hardly move my hand or anything. So anyway, I'll get better and hopefully be able to drive next month.
Certainly sorry to hear of your accident, but particularly given that you did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Kept us on track.
Appreciate it. It was a long meeting. Okay, you guys. Adjourned.
Yeah.